Chapter 2252. They couldn't help but feel puzzled. What's wrong with this celestial prime? Why does he look a little strange? The few of them looked at each other before descending from the sky and walking towards them. Thank you for saving us, celestial primes. City Lord Lu hurriedly stepped forward and bowed to the celestial primes to express his gratitude. The celestial primes waved their hands and said, "It's okay. We just happened to pass by. It's just that we were one step too late and let Shuel Luo kill so many people." City Lord Lu glanced at the corpses on the ground and said sadly, "Don't worry, celestial primes. I will definitely give them a proper burial." He didn't expect that the demonic cultivator would be Shuel Luo. He also didn't expect that tonight would be so tragic. Not only did so many cultivators die, but they also almost lost their lives here. Even the ghost doctor was sucked into the vortex because of this. He didn't know if she was still alive or not. The celestial primes nodded when they heard City Lord Lu's words. They walked towards the celestial primes of the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect and glanced at Duan Yi. Then they asked, "Old friend, what's wrong? Why do you look a little strange?" It's over. It's really over this time. We're in big trouble." The celestial primes shook his head. The current situation was unexpected. "What's over? Tell us in detail," one of the celestial primes asked. "Duan Yi, didn't you go with your uncle master and the others to gain experience? Why are you here?" Another celestial primes of the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect asked, wondering why Duan Yi was here. "Uncle master, I'm with Fengjiu." Duan Yi's voice was a little stupefied. At this moment, his mind was in a mess, and he completely ignored the fact that his wounds were still bleeding. "Uncle Master Duan, why don't you bandage your wounds first? I'm afraid that you won't be able to take it if you continue like this." Lu Xian stepped forward and whispered. Although she knew that it was impolite for them to interrupt when the Venerable was talking, she saw that his body was shaking slightly and his face was getting paler and paler. She was worried that his body would not be able to bear it. When the Immortal Venerables heard this, they looked at the wounds on Duan Yi's body. They saw large and small wounds all over his body. Some of the wounds were deep and were still bleeding. The blood had soaked his clothes. His face was pale due to the excessive blood loss. His body was swaying slightly as though he was about to fall. One of them said, "Let's go in first. Let's bandage the wound first. Immortal Venerables, please come this way." City Lord Lu endured the injuries on his body and invited them to the front yard. At this time, the guards and servants who had been hiding in the City Lord's mansion and had not come out came forward to help the injured people to the front. Behind him, Ishiran paused for a moment with his sword in hand, then followed. He also wanted to know if these Immortal Venerables had any way of finding out about Fengjiu's current situation. With Fengjiu's strength, he should be fine after entering the Door of Darkness. However, he did not know what was behind the Door of Darkness. What kind of place would the Door of Darkness teleport her to? Would he have a chance to come back? Even he did not know the answer to these questions. Perhaps he could only find out from the people of the Immortal Sect. Chapter 2253. Tell us, what's going on? One of the Celestial Supremes asked as he glanced at the crowd. His eyes then fell on the two Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect. One of the Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect took a deep breath and said, "That's what happened. To sum everything up, Fengjiu was sucked into Shuel Luo's Door of Darkness." Hearing this, the Celestial Supremes were startled. "What do you mean by Fengjiu was sucked into Shuel Luo's Door of Darkness?" "Fengjiu." They paused and looked at the person beside them and whispered, "Why does it sound so familiar?" "Fengjiu is Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. He's the person we're looking for this time. Now that he's gone, we don't know where he was sent to after entering the Door of Darkness. That's why I'm done talking." The Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect said and sighed. "We have to report this to our sect and discuss countermeasures." Hearing this, the Celestial Supremes were shocked. Some stood up abruptly while others exclaimed, "What? Ghost Dr. Fengjiu? You're saying that Ghost Dr. Fengjiu from the Heavenly Pill Dispensary was sent into the Door of Darkness?" "That's right." The Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect nodded. "How could this be? The few of them looked at each other in shock. They had come out this time for Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Now that she had been teleported into the door of darkness, how? How were they going to explain this? Do you know where he will be sent after entering the door of darkness? Ishiran asked as his gaze fell on the few of them. Hearing this, the few celestial supremes glanced at him and said, "We don't know. None of us have been sent into the door of darkness. We've never heard of anyone coming out after entering the door of darkness." Hearing this, Duan Ye's heart sank. No one has come out? He looked at the celestial supremes who spoke and asked, "What's the chance of survival after entering that place?" "It varies from person to person." The immortal venerable looked at them and said, "Although no one has ever come out after entering the door of darkness, it doesn't mean that they will die. It depends on their adaptability and ability to protect themselves." The immortal venerable stood up and walked around the hall with his hands clasped behind his back. According to legend, behind the door of darkness is the land of extreme evil. It's a sealed place where there are all kinds of abandoned villains, devil cultivators, and evil cultivators. There are also all kinds of fierce beasts there. Some people can survive there, while some die not long after entering. His voice paused for a moment before he said thoughtfully, "I've heard that there is a void that leads to the land of darkness. However, even I don't know where it is. However, I've heard from the sect leader that those who enter the door of darkness have a chance to return. However, I don't know what method they use to return. You are a celestial sovereign from the magnificent immortal sect." Ishiran looked at him and asked. The celestial sovereign glanced at Ishiran and nodded. "That's right. So if we ask your sect leader, he should know better." Ishiran asked the main point. Chapter 2254. Upon hearing the words of the celestial venerable of the magnificent immortal sect, the other celestial venerables looked at each other and whispered among themselves. Then one of them said, "Let's return to our respective sects and report this matter to the sect leader. Duan Yi, come back with us." The Cloud Jade Immortal Sect's celestial supremacy said to Duan Yi, "I'm going to 100 River City's Heavenly Pill Dispensary." Duan Yi shook his head. Now that something had happened to Fengjiu, he had to tell them about it. The two celestial supremacies didn't say anything. They only told him to be careful and pay more attention to his injuries. Thus, after settling the matter, they didn't stay for long and returned to their respective sects. Duan Yi rested in the Lu estate and prepared to leave at dawn. Ishiran also left not long after the celestial supremacies left on the other side. Fengjiu, who had been sucked into the whirlpool and transported into the door of darkness, was currently unconscious on a hillside. His surroundings were pitch black, and the air was filled with an eerie aura. The roars of ferocious beasts could be heard in the night, causing one to tremble in fear. A gust of night wind blew, and the eerily cold wind caused her body to instinctively shiver. Before she could open her eyes, she heard the faint sound of a bell ringing. When she heard the sound of the bell, her heart skipped a beat. She instantly opened her eyes and jumped up. Her divine sense regained its clarity. In her mind, she recalled the scene when she was sucked into the door of darkness. She couldn't help but look around. It was pitch black, and there was nothing. She could only feel a gust of cold wind blowing, causing her hair to stand on end. Ring, ring, ring. The small purple bell on her waist made a series of ringing sounds. She had been wearing it ever since her sworn sister, Wanyin Qianhua, gave her this necklace. Now, she looked around and didn't see anything. However, the bell kept ringing, and the eerie cold wind in the air was even more bone-chilling. She didn't see anything, but she felt like she was surrounded by invisible things. The feeling of being targeted made her hair stand on end. She steadied her mind and lowered her head to look at the bell and small gourd at her waist. Only then did she stride forward. In the darkness of the night, there was still no shadow of anything. However, the bell on her waist was still ringing in the wind, making a faint ringing sound. In the night, the moonlight was covered by dark clouds. Only a little bit of moonlight spilled from the night sky. On this unknown path, a woman in a red dress with her hair draped over her shoulders was walking lightly. From afar, she really did look like a ghost. Behind her, A dozen shadowy figures floated in the night sky and followed her from afar, as though they had merged into one with the night sky, making it impossible for anyone to see their existence. Feng Jiao walked along the path. Even if she didn't look back, even if she couldn't see the shadows around her, she knew that those things were following her. But where exactly was this place? What kind of place was she sucked into by the whirlpool? Why was the eerie aura here? Chapter 2255. After walking for a while, she felt that something was amiss. Especially when she walked along the small path and came to an open space. She saw some devil cultivators and heretic cultivators sitting in groups of 3 to 5, as well as some cultivators who were filled with murderous aura. Demonic cultivators and heretic cultivators aside, the cultivators who were filled with murderous aura and reeked of blood. Their murderous aura permeated the air. No matter how one looked at them, they did not look like ordinary itinerant cultivators. There were about 30 to 40 people sitting around the place she passed by. Some were sitting alone, some were sitting in groups of 2 or 3, and some had a ferocious beast lying beside them. Among these people, most of them were men, and there were only 1 or 2 women. Moreover, they were wearing revealing clothes and were hanging around some powerful cultivators. Her appearance naturally attracted the attention of these people. Whether it was evil cultivators, devil cultivators, or those cultivators who were filled with baleful chi and murderous intent, all of them looked at her strangely, sizing her up. In the eyes of these people, this woman in red was like a demon that had descended to the world. She walked slowly with the moonlight behind her back. Her red clothes were enchanting, and her black hair was draped over her shoulders. There was a cold and indifferent expression on her beautiful face. There wasn't the slightest bit of chi around her, but it was enough to make everyone wary. In such a place, how could a person without ability survive? This woman's appearance was enough to topple cities. Her red dress was still dazzling in the night, and it was so clean that it was not stained with blood. Such a person was naturally strange. Moreover, the moment she appeared, the surrounding air became a bit colder. That kind of gloomy aura pervaded the air, and everyone could feel that kind of cold aura. However, this woman didn't seem to notice it at all. Her gaze swept across everyone indifferently, and she continued to walk forward without stopping. Unexpectedly, everyone was just looking at her. No one made a move, and no one made a sound. No one knew that Feng Jiao's heart was tense at this moment. With just a glance, she discovered that these people were all in the immortal sage realm. Some of them were even at the peak of the immortal sage realm. The stench of blood on these people was extremely heavy. Their baleful chi and murderous intent were also extremely heavy. Even the people she had personally nurtured didn't have such a bloodthirsty, murderous intent. In this place, she restrained her profound energy aura and didn't reveal any of it, because she knew that if these people found out that she was a profound cultivator, they would probably attack her one after another. It was very likely that they would even join hands. When she passed by these people, she could only put on an indifferent face and assume the posture of an expert. Step by step, she walked past them unhurriedly. The slightest carelessness would cause them to question and investigate her, thus putting herself in danger. If he fell into the hands of these people, death would not be the easiest thing to do. If he fell into the hands of these people, it was extremely likely that his cultivation would be crippled and he would become their plaything. Chapter 2256. Those people watched as she walked away step by step, gradually disappearing into the night. However, no matter how beautiful she was and how breathtaking they were, in the end, no one dared to make a move. This was because the chilling aura that had enveloped them had disappeared along with her departure. In a place like this, the ghosts were not the same as in other places. They were not easy to deal with. It was precisely because of this that they did not dare to act rashly. Even though the woman in red had indeed caused their hearts to burn and they had the urge to pounce on her, in the end, their rationality prevailed over the desire in their hearts. To be able to survive in this place, every one of them was very clear about the way of survival here. those that they could not afford to provoke. They could not afford to provoke. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would pay with their lives. Fengjiu only stopped when she was about 500 meters away from that place. She turned around and frowned. After pondering for a moment, she took out the Aurora transfer scroll from her space. This treasure could be transferred back to any place. Although she did not know where this place was, as long as she was still on this mainland, she should be able to return. She held the Aurora transfer scroll in her hand and looked around. There was still nothing, but that eerie feeling that made one's hair stand still remained. She knew that those things were still staring at her. However, if those things did not dare to make a move on her, why did they keep following her? Could it be that they were looking for an opportunity? After scanning her surroundings, she looked at the teleportation scroll in her hand and opened it. However, the moment the Aurora teleportation scroll opened, she was stunned. How could this be? She muttered to herself as she held the Aurora teleportation scroll tightly in her hands. Her eyes were fixed on it. In the past, every time she opened the transfer scroll, the name of the place would float up and the transfer scroll would emit a ray of light. However, at this moment, it was completely calm. Those words lay there quietly. They did not float, nor did they emit any light. Even when she injected her dark force into them, there was no movement. She could not help but feel a sense of oppression. It was as if there was a ray of hope, a ray of light, but it was suddenly shattered. She could not help but take a deep breath as she tried to calm her fluctuating emotions. She held the transfer scroll in her hand and tried again, but there was still no reaction. In the end, she could only put the transfer scroll away. She braced herself for the next step and the dangers she would face. The sky was still dark. Therefore, she sat down cross-legged on the ground and closed her eyes to think. At the same time, she released her divine sense to pay attention to the movements around her. The moment she released her divine sense, she felt that there were still one or two divine senses locked onto her. She knew that there were still some people among those people who were observing her. They didn't dare to make a move now because they had guesses and were afraid. However, when their guesses and fears couldn't stop their desires, they would definitely make a move on her. At that time, with her strength alone, how could she resist a few dozen celestial saints? Bye. Chapter 2257. When the sky gradually brightened, she could feel that the cold aura around her had yet to dissipate. The bell on her waist was still gently shaking, making a ringing sound. Thus, she lit a small pile of grass and used the fog to block her vision to flash into her space. When the fog gradually dissipated and the sky gradually brightened, the surrounding ghosts were unable to find the red figure. Each and every one of them lingered around, unwilling to leave. It was as if they didn't believe that she could disappear without a trace under their watchful eyes. When the sun rose, the cultivators began to leave one after another. Some of them came over, but when they saw that the red-clothed woman was no longer there, their eyes flashed with a strange light. That's right. That person doesn't look like an ordinary person. Perhaps she really is a powerful person. Otherwise, how could a woman like her dare to strut around in front of them without fear? Since they couldn't find the woman, everyone began to leave one after another. Only one or two people swept their eyes over the air, as if they could feel that the cold aura was still pervading the air. However, they couldn't find the woman's figure in the surroundings, so they didn't stay. In the space, Fengjiu was sitting cross-legged as she stared at the scene outside. Her eyes flashed with a strange light, and her expression was unclear, as if she was thinking about something. Only when she saw that those people had left did she close her eyes to rest. After resting, she would go out and find a way to find out where this place was and how to return to 100 River City. The morning quietly passed by. At noon, after resting in the space for an entire morning, her originally tense mind relaxed a bit. She wasn't in a hurry to go out. Instead, she changed her appearance in the space and put on a few more sets of clothes. Finally, she put on a set of shabby clothes. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. The person in the mirror had changed from a beautiful woman to a bearded man. Due to wearing many sets of clothes, although he wasn't rough, he still had the appearance of a man. There was a frightening scar on his face that stretched from the top corner of his left eye to the bottom corner of his right eye. His thick and heavy eyebrows set off his ferocious face, making him exude a murderous aura that kept people away. Not only did she change her appearance, but she also changed her appearance from head to toe. Even those immortal sage experts, or even immortal venerables, wouldn't be able to see through her disguise. With her current appearance, she believed that it would be easier for her to blend in with those people. Moreover, she wouldn't attract their attention. On the contrary, it would be safer and less troublesome than when she was a woman in red. All right, now, I'm only missing a large blade. She muttered softly and looked at the pile of weapons in her space. Then, she picked out a sharp blade that was about 4 fingers wide. She carried the large blade on her shoulder and went to the spirit spring. Looking at the surface of the water, she raised her thick eyebrows and glared with her sharp eyes. In an instant, she looked like a fierce and rough man. Not bad, not bad. Chapter 2258. The noon sun was a little glaring, but when she appeared in this place, she still felt a cold aura. Moreover, the bell on her waist rang again. She frowned slightly and glanced at her surroundings before walking forward. Indeed, they were not ordinary ghosts. They dared to appear under the scorching sun, but they did not dare to get close to her. Since that was the case, she would just ignore them. She threw out an ordinary flying instrument and gradually shook off the ghosts behind her. Only when she saw a city gate in the distance did she get down from the flying instrument. Black Mountain City? She muttered these 3 words and was slightly surprised. What kind of place was this? Looking ahead, he saw several demonic cultivators guarding the city gate. However, it seemed as if there was no one inside the city. It was very quiet. Should she go in? She hesitated and hid her aura behind a tree. She sat down behind a tree by the roadside and wanted to observe for a while before making a decision. However, she sat here for about an hour and no one came out, not to mention going in. Just as she was about to leave, she saw a group of devil cultivators, heretic cultivators, and itinerant cultivators walking over. She took a look and saw that there were about 20 people in the group. They were walking together with an arrogant aura. Before they even got close, their loud and wanton voices could already be heard. Those people must be dreaming. A beautiful woman in red? Ha 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 ha. We've been active in this area for so long and have never seen any beautiful woman. How could such a person appear in a place like this? That's right. From what I see, they want to take the opportunity to join our Black Mountain City and become one of our people. They don't have any power to rely on here and can only rely on those scattered people. I reckon it won't be long before they're killed or robbed. They don't even see that it's so easy to enter our Black Mountain City. Even if they make up a story, they can't make it more believable. In such an evil place, female cultivators are rare, not to mention a beautiful woman in red. That's right. Master even told us to go outside and capture some female cultivators. However, we didn't meet any female cultivators on this trip. Even if there were, they were protected by some stronger people. It's not easy to find a woman here. Who asked those who were exiled to the land of all evil to be so many evil people? Female cultivator? I reckon there are a few banshees. The group of people talked and laughed as they walked towards the city. When they were about to enter the city, one of them suddenly turned around and looked around. What's wrong? One of them asked as he turned around to take a look. Why do I feel like someone is watching us? As the man spoke, he scanned the surroundings with his bloodthirsty eyes. He released his divine sense, but he didn't detect anyone else's aura. Others. Ha ha! The man next to him laughed and patted him on the shoulder. You're worrying too much. Don't you know where you are? Who dares to come here? What's more, in front of our city gate, there's a barrier laid down by Master. Other than those who wear our waist tokens, who else can enter? Who will be so foolish as to rush to their deaths? Hearing this, the person nodded and said, that's true. I was thinking too much. Then he followed his people and went through the barrier before entering the city gate. Chapter 2259. After making a round, she entered the forest. She leaped onto a big tree to rest as she thought about the news she had heard earlier. What the hell was this place? She frowned. She really had no idea what to do now. She originally thought that Black Mountain City was a populated town, but now it seemed that Black Mountain City was a place similar to a bandit stronghold. That place could not be entered at all. Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard the roar of a ferocious beast. She quickly snapped back to her senses and saw a group of ferocious beasts that looked like dogs, but were not dogs. They were about half the height of a person and were running toward her. They were barking nonstop. The black dog that was running in front kicked its hind legs and pounced forward. It pounced towards her, scaring her so much that she instinctively let out a low cry. She retreated and fell from the tree. Damn it, what kind of dog is this? After she steadied herself, she looked at the ferocious beast that was half the height of a person and had 2 sharp fangs. It looked like a wild dog, but its body was surging with a dark aura. It let out a low growl and stared at her with its teeth bared. When it approached her step by step, she immediately broke into a run. Roar! A woo! Dozens of big black, ferocious dogs chased after her on all fours. In order to avoid this group of ferocious beasts, she took out the medicine bag at her waist and sprinkled it behind her. She quickened her pace, and not long after, she shook off the group of ferocious beasts behind her. When she came to a place, she half bent her waist and placed her hands on her knees. She gasped for breath and looked back. When she saw that they did not chase after her, she sat down on the ground. What is this? It's actually chasing me? She sneered and said self-deprecatingly, a dragon in the shallows will be teased by shrimps. A tiger in the plains will be bullied by dogs. This is the situation right now, isn't it? She had inexplicably arrived here and could not return. She did not even know where this place was. All she met were either fiendish cultivators, heretic cultivators, or evil people. Even a group of ferocious beasts that looked like dogs was chasing after her and barking. Her mood was about to explode. However, at this moment, a demonic cultivator appeared not far away. When he noticed the figure sitting on the ground, he immediately restrained his aura and walked forward step by step. When he was about 5 meters away, he suddenly attacked the person. Fengjiu was currently on the verge of exploding when she felt the murderous aura coming from behind her. This time, she did not choose to avoid the battle. Instead, she quickly turned around and slashed out with a large saber in her hand. Her profound energy aura also followed the slash of the large saber in her hand, and a sharp and intimidating saber aura streaked across the air. Swish! The demonic cultivator was shocked and quickly retreated. However, he was still 1 step too late. His abdomen was still cut by the blade energy. His clothes were torn, his flesh was cut open, and blood seeped out. The sudden pain caused him to instinctively let out a muffled groan. He covered his wound with 1 hand and quickly retreated. He vigilantly stared at the man who had turned around. Previously, the man did not seem to have any aura surging from his body, but in an instant, he exploded with such a strong combat ability. Just 1 attack had injured him, and he could not help but be shocked. He wanted to escape from this dangerous person, so he slowly moved back step by step. Chapter 2260. What are you trying to do? The demonic cultivator's voice trembled as he felt the aura of death enveloping him. He could not help but feel regret. If he had known earlier, he would not have attacked this person while he was alone. Fengjiu stared at him without saying a word. Instead, the dark energy in her body surged. She stabbed the large saber in her hand into the ground, and in the next moment, her figure flashed and her fist, which contained a strong dark energy, swung violently. Whoosh! Bang, bang, bang. The sound of her fists landing on the ground was heard. The demonic cultivator was stunned for a moment. He could not dodge in time and took a direct hit from Fengjiu's fists, which contained a strong hidden force. Every punch contained a hidden force. When it landed, it was as if a heavy iron hammer had struck down. The muffled banging sound was unusually clear, and occasionally there was the crisp sound of bones breaking. Screams of agony rang out in the forest, startling the birds in the forest and causing them to flap their wings and fly away. Some of the cultivators in the forest heard the screams, and each of them had a different expression on their faces. However, no one went near the source of the sound. This kind of thing happened too often. Sometimes, meddling in other people's business would cause them to lose their lives. Surviving in this kind of place, all they had to do was to survive. The screams of agony grew weaker and weaker. However, at this moment, Fengjiu, who had vented her anger, stopped. She stepped on the demonic cultivator whose face was bruised and swollen and was on the verge of death and asked, "Do you want to live?" When the demonic cultivator, who was already powerless to resist, heard this, he quivered and hurriedly replied, "Yes, yes." The person in front of him was like a demon in his eyes. He had thought that he would be beaten to death. Since he had asked this question, did that mean that he had a chance of survival? "Even if you want me to follow you, I will agree. As long as you spare my life and don't kill me," the demonic cultivator said as he looked at Fengjiu. His eyes were filled with a strong will to live. "Let me ask you, where is this place?" Fengjiu asked in a low voice. Not only had she changed her appearance, even her voice had become hoarse and masculine. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator was stunned, as if he did not expect Fengjiu to ask this question. He pointed at Fengjiu's foot on his chest and said, "Can you let me sit up first?" "Speak." Fengjiu's voice and increased the force of her foot. The demonic cultivator groaned and blood flowed from his mouth, and a trace of fear in his eyes. I'll speak. The demonic cultivator hurriedly said, enduring the pain in his body. "This is the land of extreme evil. It is a place set up by the 4 great immortal emperors. Those who enter this place cannot leave. In this land of extreme evil, there are 8 great villains. Each of them occupies 8 mountains, and they have many cultivators under them. If you follow them, other than having food to fill your stomach, your safety will also be guaranteed. However, if you submit to them, you will have to acknowledge them as your master. Therefore, some cultivators who do not want to be bound are scattered all over this place. They specialize in killing cultivators and stealing things for a living. Chapter 2261. That's right. This place that was carved out by the immortal emperors is isolated from the original mainland. The food here is also limited, and most of the food is taken by the 8 great villains. Although we are devil cultivators, we don't have any fasting pills in this place, so we can only find food to fill our stomachs. So most of the time, we snatch and kill those we can kill to reduce the wastage of resources. Is there really no way to leave this place? She asked with a frown. This is a barrier and array set up by the immortal emperors, and it was set up by 4 immortal emperors together. Naturally, it's not something that we can break. Moreover, there are restrictions here. Anyone who enters this place, no matter if they are devil cultivators, heretic cultivators, or cultivators from the righteous path, will remain at the same level of strength they had when they entered. No one can raise their strength or advance in here. As the devil cultivator spoke, his face became increasingly pale, and a mouthful of blood spilled from his mouth. His body was covered with injuries, and even if she didn't kill him, it would be difficult for him to survive here. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. It was indeed a restriction. It was precisely because of that restriction that her Aurora teleportation array was unable to be used here. But fortunately, although there was a restriction here, her spiritual energy and profound energy were not restricted. Otherwise, she would really be dead if she entered here. Tell me all the powers here. She retracted her leg. Since this place was set up by the 4 immortal emperors, there must be a way to break it. She did not believe that anyone who entered this place could not leave. Cough, cough, I puffed. He sat up and spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was on the verge of collapse, as if he would collapse at any time. Seeing this, Fengjiu frowned. This person was a devil cultivator, and she had hit him with all her might just now. Every punch contained a force of 1,000 pounds, and she did not need to look to know that his internal organs were all damaged. She had never been kind to people who wanted her life, not to mention this person was a devil cultivator. However, she still wanted to find out other things from him, so it was not appropriate to let him die like this. Hence, she turned her palm and 3 silver needles pierced out, smoothing out his blood flow. Feeling the abnormality in his body, the devil cultivator was slightly startled and looked at the man in front of him with a pale face. "You won't die, speak," she said in a low voice. His body was indeed much better than before. Thus, the demonic cultivator told him everything that Feng Jiu wanted to know and everything that he already knew. After obtaining the information she wanted to know, Feng Jiu glanced at the demonic cultivator on the ground and said, "I'll let you off this time. Next time, you better not let me see you again." With that, she turned and left. After walking out of the forest, she threw out the aircraft and jumped on it. Stepping on the aircraft, she took off from the ground and flew all the way to the sky. Since he had set up a formation and barrier, he had to see what kind of formation and barrier it was before he could think of a way to leave this place. Her figure slowly rose. The further she was from the ground, the greater the pressure above her head. Even though she had the might of an ancient divine beast in her body, she could still feel the invisible pressure spreading throughout the sky. Chapter 2262. Who is that? Why is he up there? That idiot. Is he trying to escape from here? Doesn't he know where he is? If we could escape so easily, will we still be locked up here? People who have been here for a while wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Could it be that this person just came in? The people below were discussing in groups of 3 to 5. They were a little curious about the person who was trying to break through the barrier above. Therefore, all of their gazes fell on that person. Some wanted to watch a good show. Because of the restriction here, when they reached a certain height on their flying swords or flying artifacts, they would be pressed down by the powerful pressure above. It was the feeling of weightlessness that came from being directly pressed down from the sky. It was as if the spiritual energy in their bodies was instantly suppressed. Immediately after, a huge mountain pressed down on them from above with a bang, making it impossible for them to dodge or bear the pressure and fall from above. Those who were pressed down by the pressure from above, even if they didn't die, would be half dead. At the very least, they had seen several cultivators and devil cultivators who tried to leave from above. They were pressed down by the pressure and directly fell to their deaths. At this moment, Feng Jiu was completely unaware that although the higher she went, the stronger the pressure was. However, she had the pressure of an ancient divine beast in her body. Moreover, her spiritual power was different from ordinary people. Others couldn't withstand it, but she could. Therefore, when she reached the top and stood on top of the artifact and looked down, the people below were so small that they couldn't be seen. She tried to go up again, but she couldn't because her hands touched a barrier that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. It was this barrier that had blocked her way, and it was also this barrier that had trapped her here. She tried several times, but was unable to break through this barrier. Thus, she stood on this high ground and looked down at the surroundings. Because she stood at a high place, she could see far. With a glance, she could see everything here. When she saw everything clearly, her expression couldn't help but change slightly. Is this the masterpiece of the 4 great immortal emperors? With the strength of an immortal emperor, could it be that they could move mountains and seas and set up a prison? She muttered softly. She was shocked, emotional, and excited. The scene in front of her was something she had never seen before. Looking around, she saw 8 mountains surrounding a region filled with clouds and mist. It was very spectacular, and this region was where she was now. Even from such a high place, she could only see the region around the 8 mountains. Behind the 8 mountains was a vast expanse of white. This place was indeed, as the demonic cultivator had said. It was a place that was isolated and divided. However, upon closer inspection, one would be able to see that this place was an enormous formation. The formation was divided into 8 mountain peaks, and a grand formation was set up. A place like this was clearly a region floating in the sky. Her heart trembled, and her eyes widened. Her blood began to boil as she carefully memorized the layout of the area. Then she took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, suppressing the excitement in her heart. Chapter 2263. The cultivators below did not know what Fengjiu was thinking, nor did they know what she saw above. However, everyone saw that the figure had risen extremely high into the sky. However, the scene of the figure being pressed down did not appear, and they could not help but feel puzzled. Why did that cultivator go up and not be pressed down by the restriction? Could it be that the restriction in the sky has been removed? Many cultivators muttered softly. Looking at the figure standing in the sky, many people below were slightly moved. Thinking about it, if that cultivator could reach the top, then with their strength and cultivation, they should be able to reach the top as well. After so long, they hadn't been able to clearly see the surroundings of the area they were in. Now that that cultivator had taken the lead, they could give it a try. I want to go up and see. Who dares to go with me? A demonic cultivator stood up and looked at the cultivators sitting around him. Hearing this, those people glanced at him and could not help but fall silent. They did not want to cause trouble, so no one answered the demonic cultivator. Puffed. Since no one dares, I'll go up myself. Seeing that no one dared to stand up, the demonic cultivator immediately looked at the figure in the sky. If that person was fine, he would naturally be fine too. Furthermore, they all knew that this place had been set up with a formation and a barrier. If they wanted to leave, they might have to break the formation and the barrier to escape this place. If they went up to the sky, they might be able to obtain unexpected gains. Therefore, he threw out his flying sword and rode it towards the sky. The people below watched as the demonic cultivator rode his flying sword straight up. Not long after, he was high up in the sky. However, looking at the distance, he seemed to be much lower than the figure in the sky. Moreover, his figure stopped high up in the sky and could not go any further. It seems that he can't go up either. That's his limit, someone said as he looked at the figure that was trying to fly up again. At this time, he was already kneeling down. He couldn't even raise his head, as if he was being pressed down by something. Then, in the instant that everyone was stunned, they saw the figure in the sky instantly fall from the sky with a whoosh. Ah! The demonic cultivator cried out in alarm. The spiritual power in his entire body was suppressed at that moment. His body felt as if it was being pressed down by a mountain, and he instantly fell from the sky and crashed heavily to the ground. When the cultivators below saw this scene, they couldn't help but be shocked. That person was originally flying up on his sword around them. Now that he fell down from above, he directly fell towards where they were. Everyone was so shocked that they instantly jumped up and retreated. Boom! Bang! There was a loud bang, and amidst the screams, it was as if a heavy object had fallen from the sky. It heavily smashed into the ground, causing the ground where they were standing to tremble slightly. Immediately after, dust and smoke filled the air, and powerful spiritual energy fluctuations rippled out from the surroundings. The dust and smoke blocked everyone's line of sight. Everyone held their breaths. When the dust and smoke gradually dissipated, they saw a hole that was several meters wide, about 10 meters in front of them. Chapter 2264. However, at this moment, the demonic cultivator was lying there motionlessly. There was no sign of life on his body. His spirit force was suppressed. After falling from such a high place, his bones were broken and his flesh was mangled. Only his eyes were filled with fear. Even in death, he was still unable to close his eyes. Seeing the demonic cultivator at the peak of the fairy realm die like this, the surrounding people had different expressions. They couldn't help but look up at the figure in the sky who hadn't come down yet. At this moment, Fengjiu was about to come down. Because she heard the sound, she went to look in that direction. Previously, when that person flew up on his sword, she had noticed it. However, she didn't expect that the other party would only reach such a height before being forcibly suppressed. Thinking of the restriction here, her eyes moved slightly. It seemed that if one didn't have powerful spiritual energy and the pressure of an ancient divine beast like her, they wouldn't be able to reach such a height. However, this was also good. The others couldn't see the layout of this area. She withdrew her gaze and came down from the sky. When the people below saw the person coming down, some of them rushed in that direction. Anyone could see that something was wrong. That person wasn't suppressed by the restriction when he went up. It was obvious that there was something extraordinary about him. Why don't they go over and ask if he saw anything different when he went up? However, when Fengjiu came down from the sky and felt that there was no one around, she flashed into the space. When those cultivators rushed over, they couldn't find any trace of Fengjiu. In the space, Fengjiu recalled the layout of this area and drew it. After a long time, she held the diagram and looked at it. This is a great restrictive formation that combines a spirit barrier and a formation. Then, as long as she can break it, the restrictive formation here will also disappear. She softly murmured. She took the blueprint and looked at it, then finally put it away. Right now, in addition to breaking the restriction, it was also very important to increase her strength. Compared to the others here, her advantage was that she had the space. The restriction outside didn't have any effect in this space. Since this was the case, she could increase her strength here first. If she increased her strength, she might be able to break the seal on her spiritual energy. At that time, if she wanted to break the restriction, she would need the help of spiritual energy. After making up her mind, she sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate here. At the same time, due to the fact that two cultivators had flown into the sky at the same time, one of them had remained in the sky for a long time before slowly descending, while the other was forcefully suppressed by a restriction halfway up. With this comparison, it became even more obvious that this matter was unusual, and because of this, the news quickly spread. When the demonic cultivator in Black Mountain City heard this, he smiled playfully. Is this true? He hugged a plump woman beside him and stared at the demonic cultivator who reported this matter. Master, it's true. The news has already spread. I think the other experts who have their own territories will also receive the news soon. The devil cultivator below said, Many people saw this. It can't be fake. Chapter 2265. Didn't I order you to search for her? What? You still haven't found her? Hearing this, the demonic cultivator quickly lowered his head and said, Forgive us, Master. We sent out 2 teams to search outside, but there was no news of the woman in red. However, we found some cultivators who had seen her before. According to their understanding, she didn't have the slightest bit of aura. Moreover, wherever she went, the air around her became colder, as if she was being chased by a ghost. Speaking of this, the demonic cultivator paused for a moment before continuing. It's because of this that those cultivators didn't dare to make a move against her. However, other than that one time when she appeared, no one has seen her before. Therefore, your subordinates are guessing that she might be. What might she be? The demonic cultivator in the main seat narrowed his eyes and asked. Your subordinates are guessing that the woman in red might be a ghost in red. After saying this, the demonic cultivator stopped and didn't dare to continue. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator in the main seat couldn't help but pause for a moment. He looked at the demonic cultivator below and said, Let's put this matter aside for now. Go find a man with the scar on his face and bring him back after you find him. I'm curious, how did he manage to get so high up in the sky? Yes, the demonic cultivator replied and left. Several other places also received the same news. Therefore, out of surprise and doubt, they also sent people to search for the man with the scar on his face. They wanted to bring him back and ask him what was so special about him. However, while everyone in this area began to search for Fengjiu and set off a frenzy, Fengjiu was cultivating in the space and was completely unaware of what was happening outside, on the other side, 100 River City, Heavenly Pill Building. When Fengjiu's news of his safety reached the Heavenly Pill Building, Guan Shilin and Mo Chan were sitting in the backyard of the Heavenly Pill Building and discussing matters. After receiving the news, Lung Hua brought the news to the backyard and handed it to Guan Shilin. This is the news that Master sent back from the Tianyuan Palace branch in Lua City. Hearing this, Guan Shilin glanced at Mo Chun and took the letter. After removing the watermark on it, he opened it and saw the words written on it. Guan Shilin smiled and handed the letter to Mo Chun at the same time, saying to them, "This is the letter that Xiao Jiao sent back to tell us that she's safe and sound. She told us that she's fine and is on her way back." Hearing this, Leng Hua also smiled. "It's good that she's fine. I'm going to tell everyone so that they won't worry." And Guan Shilin smiled as he watched Leng Hua nod and leave. He then looked at Mo Chun and saw that Mo Chun was holding the letter with a pensive look on his face. He didn't know what Mo Chun was thinking about. "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" Mo Chun raised his eyes and glanced at him. He shook his head and handed the letter back to him. "I can't put my finger on it. I just find it strange." "What's strange?" Guan Shilin asked. Chapter 2266. Hearing this, Guan Shilin also felt that it made sense. If she wanted to come back, wouldn't it be faster and more convenient to use the Aurora transmission scroll? However, she didn't use it and chose to fly back. Could it be that something happened to her? Maybe she just has some things to deal with. Guan Shilin said. He felt that since she could escape from the demon cultivator, there shouldn't be any big problems. Maybe she encountered something on the way, so she didn't choose to use the Aurora transmission scroll. Maybe. However, she's the star of the Phoenix, so she's also a person blessed by the heavens. She has great luck, so naturally, she'll have more disasters than ordinary people. Mo Chun sighed softly. "I should have followed her closely, but I didn't expect that after coming here, I wouldn't be able to see her for a few days." "Don't worry, she'll be fine," Guan Shilin said. It wasn't clear if he was comforting Mo Chun or himself. After 3 days, Duan Yi finally arrived at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary in 100 River City. He entered and looked around the first floor of the Heavenly Pill Dispensary. Looking at the pills placed on the first floor, his eyes flashed slightly. In such a place, there were so many high-grade medicinal pills. Only Feng Jiao could do this. This place was filled with her aura from the inside out. Whether it was the rules written on the walls of the Heavenly Pill Dispensary, the people who received her here, or the pills placed in the cabinets, they all had her unique style. "Young Master Duan?" Leng Hua looked at the person who came and was slightly surprised. Duan Yi glanced at him and nodded. "I have something to tell you." Hearing this, Leng Hua looked at him and said, "Please come with me." He took him to the backyard and asked someone to invite Guan Shilin over. After serving him tea, Leng Hua asked, "Weren't you with my master? Why did I only see you? Where's my master?" Later, Guan Shilin asked someone to ask the people in Luhe City and found out that Duan Yi was by his master's side at that time. However, he didn't expect Duan Yi to come at this time and come alone. "Leng Hua, is Xiao Jiao back?" Guan Shilin's voice could be heard even before he arrived. He strode in from outside. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw Duan Yi, who was sitting in the middle of the courtyard, looking around but not seeing Feng Jiao. He couldn't help but be slightly surprised. "Is Xiao Jiao back?" Duan Yi stood up and bowed slightly to Guan Shilin before saying, "Something happened to her, and she can't come back." Upon hearing this, Guan Shilin's expression changed. He strode forward and put his hands on Duan Yi's shoulders. "Something happened to Xiao Jiao? What happened? Why couldn't he come back? What's going on?" Due to Guan Shilin's strength, Duan Yi's shoulders hurt, but he didn't shout or scream. He just looked at them with a face full of guilt. "It's all because of me." Leng Hua noticed that Duan Yi's expression wasn't quite right. He also saw Guan Shilin's strong grip on his shoulders. Only then did he step forward and say to Guan Shilin, "Don't be anxious. Let him go and let him speak in detail." Hearing this, Guan Shilin took a deep breath and let go of Duan Yi. Seeing that Duan Yi's expression wasn't very good, he said, "Sorry, I forgot myself." He paused, looked at him and asked, "Are you injured?" Chapter 2267. Guan Shilin and Leng Hua glanced at each other, then walked up to him. One of them sat down while the other stood. "What do you think happened to Xiao Jiao?" Guan Shilin asked in a deep voice. Could it be that Mo Chun was right? Did Xiao Jiao encounter some kind of disaster again? We met Shuel Luo, one of the 10 great demons under the demon lord's command in Lua City. Duanyi told him everything in detail. Finally, he said, because of this, she was sucked into the door of darkness. Shuel Luo was killed by the immortal sovereigns of the major immortal sects who arrived later. I asked the immortal sovereigns, but they knew very little about the door of darkness. That's why I rushed over to tell you about it. I want to discuss it with you and see if you have any ideas. The two of them fell into deep thought when they heard that. They were not from the upper reaches of the continent, so they did not know much about the matters here, let alone the matter of the door of darkness. When they heard Duanye's words, they only knew that the situation was very serious, but there was nothing they could do. How about this? You stay here and heal your injuries. I'll go find Imo-chan. He's the disciple of Tianji Elder. I think you should know about the door of darkness. Perhaps I'll have some ideas. Guan Shilin stood up and said. Hearing this, Duanyi nodded. That's the only thing we can do. Lung Hua, he's injured. Have Fan Lin take a look at him and see what kind of pill he needs to take. Take it from the building and give it to him. Guan Shilin instructed. Okay, I understand. Lung Hua nodded. After watching him leave the courtyard, he said, Young Master Duan, please take a seat. I'll call Fan Lin over. No need to trouble yourself. My internal injuries will heal in a few days. Duanyi said, then continued. Back then, Fengjiu gave me a lot of pills, and when I came over, I'd already consumed the inner core. After Fan Lin looks at you, if he says you don't need to use it, then don't use it. If your internal injuries haven't healed, then it won't be too late to take another pill. Lung Hua said, then said to him, sit down, I'll be right back. He walked forward, and before long, he brought Fan Lin over to take Duanye's pulse. On the other side, Guan Shilin left the Heavenly Pill building and headed towards Nala Manor. He was led to Imo-chan's courtyard by a servant. As soon as he saw Imo-chan, before he could speak, Imo-chan asked, but what happened? Hearing this, Guan Shilin strode to the stone table in the courtyard and sat down. He glanced at him and said, your mouth is really accurate. You were right. Something happened to Xiaojiu. Hearing this, Imo-chan was not surprised. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back, sat down at the table, and asked what happened. Where is she now? How did you get the news? It was in Luhi City. She and Duan Yi met Shuel Luo, one of the top 10 demonic cultivators in the city lord's mansion. They were sucked into the door of darkness opened by Shuel Luo, and now we don't know where they are. Guan Shilin said angrily and asked, what's going on with this door of darkness? Where will they be sent to after being sucked in? Why did Duanyi say that even the senior immortal of the immortal sect doesn't know where the door of darkness leads to? Do you know? Chapter 2268. So we'll just leave her be? What if something happens that she can't solve herself? Guan Shilin said worriedly. Imo-chan smiled gently. Compared to this, I think it's more important for you to help her guard the Heavenly Pill building. Otherwise, if the news of her being sucked into the door of darkness spreads, someone will harm the Heavenly Pill building. Who dares to have designs on the Heavenly Pill building? If one comes, I'll kill one. If two come, I'll kill two. He snorted coldly. His voice was sonorous and powerful, and his eyes were sharp and contained a murderous aura. Seeing this, Imo-chan smiled and said, since the people from the 4 major immortal sects already know that she's the Phoenix Star, you don't have to worry about her being sucked into the door of darkness. The people from the sects will think of a way. You should go back first. Appease her subordinates and tell them not to worry. When the time comes, she'll naturally return. If that's the case, I'll go back first. Guan Shilin stood up and saluted him before taking his leave. After the people from the 4 major mortal sects heard the news, they gathered at the Huasian sect to discuss. Fengjiu, who did not know what was happening here, was cultivating in that space. As time passed, more than half a month had passed, but she was unable to break through the threshold of the realm. In the space, she opened her eyes and exhaled lightly. Her eyebrows were slightly knitted. I'm missing an opportunity. It seems that I have to go outside. With her current strength at the peak of the Black Martial God realm, it would be difficult for her to advance further, especially since the spiritual power in her body was still sealed and could not complement each other. Thus, she could only look for an opportunity to advance. Therefore, she stood up and looked at her current appearance. Finally, she thought about it and changed her makeup. Many cultivators had seen the heavenly imperial equipment when it was high up in the sky. In addition, there was the scene of the devil cultivator being suppressed by the restriction. She estimated that if she went out with this appearance, she would definitely be targeted by those people. Since that was the case, she would change her makeup again. Anyway, to her, changing her appearance was just a matter of moving her hands and feet. After changing her appearance, it would save her a lot of trouble. Why not? Immediately, she began to fiddle with it. This time, she used her usual appearance when she was outside. He couldn't be said to be the most outstanding, but he was delicate and handsome. Coupled with his green robes, he looked somewhat cultured and refined. He was somewhat different from those people who were filled with murderous intent. If this person is outstanding, he can't hide it even if he wants to. She looked at the green figure reflected in the spring water, looked at the handsome face of the young man, and chuckled. Who asked me to have such an elegant demeanor? My bearing is out of the ordinary. So be it. It's also pleasing to the eye. She muttered to herself with a hint of a smile and smugness in her voice. If someone familiar with her was by her side, they would definitely say that she was overly narcissistic. She used her divine sense to check the surroundings. Seeing that the surroundings were very peaceful and there were no cultivators around, she flashed out of the space. She flicked her green clothes and brushed her sleeves. Only then did she walk forward in a relaxed and happy mood, humming a little tune. Chapter 2269. However, this place was filled with devil cultivators and evil people. If she were to break the barrier and the formation one day, how would she deal with the people here? Thinking of this, she fell into deep thought. It seemed like she had to reorganize everyone here before breaking the barrier. Right now, the most important thing was to increase her strength. Only when she was strong enough would she be able to suppress the people here. Should she kill them or keep them alive? It would all be decided by her strength. Then let's build a team first. Compared to those devil cultivators and evil cultivators, those ferocious cultivators still have their merits, she murmured as she walked towards the place where the rogue cultivators often appeared. She wanted to build a team of cultivators, a team that could deal with the devil cultivators and evil cultivators here. And these people could be found among the rogue cultivators here. She took out a fruit from the space and ate it. As she walked into the forest, she released her divine sense and paid attention to the movements around her. When she arrived in the forest, she could still see some devil cultivators sitting together. There were also some cultivators sitting around. These people were quietly sizing her up when she appeared. Her gaze swept past those devil cultivators and evil cultivators. Her gaze lingered on those cultivators. With a sweep of her divine sense, she could clearly see their strength and cultivation base. There were 13 cultivators here and more than a dozen devil cultivators and evil cultivators. All of them were sitting around. Putting aside the devil cultivators for the time being, she roughly glanced at those cultivators. The weakest among them was at the peak of the nascent soul realm. Among them, most of them were at the fairy realm. There were also 3 or 4 who were at the peak of the fairy realm, and one who was at the intermediate level of the celestial sage realm. She looked at the cultivator at the intermediate level of the celestial sage realm. He was a middle-aged man. His clothes were tattered and torn in several places. His hair was not tied up neatly. A few strands of hair were scattered messily. Perhaps he noticed that she was sizing him up. He raised his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was sharp and terrifying. His eyes were filled with bloodthirsty, killing intent. The murderous aura around him also spread out. Seeing this, her eyes flashed slightly. This person's strength was not bad. It would be a great help if she could recruit him. However, he was a cultivator at the intermediate level of the celestial sage realm. Such strength was already considered very strong in this place. It would not be easy to recruit him. According to the devil cultivator who had revealed the information to her, the rogue cultivators here were unwilling to be bound, unwilling to acknowledge a master and be controlled. Since that was the case, if she wanted to recruit them, she had to convince them or have a reason for them to follow her willingly. She retracted her gaze. With a tap of her toes, she leaped onto a tree to rest. She did not care about the probing eyes on her. The surrounding rogue cultivators were all sizing up Feng Nine. They saw that the man was dressed in a green robe. He was extremely clean, and he didn't look very old. They were very surprised to see such a person suddenly appear here. Chapter 2270. When they thought of this, many people had this thought. However, it was only a fleeting thought. After all, they didn't see the man and the woman together. Moreover, the woman didn't have the slightest bit of spirit energy around her, but the man's aura was profound chi. Profound cultivators were the least popular here. Even if they were at the Black Tortoise God level, their combat strength was probably not as good as a nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, cultivators who had formed an alliance would usually go in and out together. That way, they would be able to look out for each other if anything happened. In the past half a month, the members of the 8 great organizations had been looking for the woman in red and the man with the scar. It was said that these people had already guessed that the 2 of them were in cahoots. After they had appeared, the 2 of them had disappeared together. It was obvious that they were hiding somewhere. We plan to go to the beast forest to get some food. Is there anyone who wants to work with us? A devil cultivator asked. Beside him sat another devil cultivator who was at the peak of the fairy realm. Hearing this, the loose cultivators around them fell silent. No one spoke. Those who were familiar with these 2 devil cultivators knew that anyone who went with them would never return. Seeing that no one around them responded, the 2 of them looked at each other and stood up. One of them had a sinister and strange smile on his face. His gaze swept across the crowd and landed on the man in green who was alone on the tree. The 2 of them gestured to each other and walked towards the tree. They shouted at the man in green, "Hey, you're coming with us." When the crowd saw this, they looked at the young man on the tree with confused expressions. Are they going to bring the young man with them? Since they had invited him, the young man would probably not be able to escape. Some of the devil cultivators looked like they were watching a good show. Some of them had bloodthirsty excitement in their eyes. They could imagine what would happen to the man in green. If he agreed to the invitation of the 2 devil cultivators, even if he did not die in the beast forest, he would definitely be killed on the way back. If he did not agree to go with them, he would definitely die here. No matter what he chose, he would not be able to escape death in the end. Fengjiu, who was on the tree, glanced at the 2 people below. His eyes moved slightly as he looked at them and asked, "You want me to go with you to the beast forest?" "That's right," the devil cultivator below replied, his bloodthirsty eyes staring at him on the tree. Hearing this, Fengjiu rubbed his chin and asked, "It said that there are ferocious beasts everywhere, and even the people from the 8 factions don't dare to approach it." "Not bad," the demonic cultivators responded once again. One of them had already placed his hand on the long sword at his waist. It was as if he would kill the young man if he refused. "So you're saying that all the meat is in there?" Her eyes lit up and excitement and anticipation appeared on her handsome face. "Not bad," the demonic cultivator said good-naturedly. Staring at the young man's excited expression, he sneered in his heart. Even if all the meat was inside, the premise was that they had to have a way to kill the beasts. The beasts inside were all ferocious beasts. Even with their cultivation, it was difficult to kill a single one of them. Chapter 2271. Hearing the young man's straightforward response, the surrounding crowd was astonished for a moment. This was clearly a trap, and there was actually an idiot who would jump into it. Was there something wrong with this man's brain? "AI, I haven't eaten meat for a long time, and I'm craving it. Let's go. Since we're going, let's not waste time," Fengjiu said with a relaxed expression, and there was no fear on his face. The 2 demonic cultivators were also stunned for a moment and looked suspiciously at the young man in front of them before finally saying, Then let's go. Follow us." As they spoke, they flew on their swords and headed towards the direction of the fearsome beast forest. Seeing this, Fengjiu also flew on his sword and followed. After the three of them left, some of the cultivators began to discuss. "I wonder where this stupid kid came from, and he actually dares to follow those two to the fearsome beast forest? He's courting death. He's probably starving. Look at that kid. He doesn't have much meat on him. He probably hasn't smelled the aroma of meat for a long time. Not to mention that kid hasn't smelled the aroma of meat for a long time. I haven't eaten meat for 2 to 3 months. During this time, I've been picking some wild fruits in the forest to satisfy my hunger. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer places where we can find food. The people from the 8 Peaks are too ruthless. Not only do they occupy the mountains, but they also snatch things and territory from us. They're trying to force us to our deaths. You want to eat meat? It's not like there isn't any. If you join any of the 8 Peaks, you'll naturally be able to eat and drink well with them." Eat and drink well? Ha ha, don't make me laugh to death. Even the people from the 8 Peaks eat meat separately. Don't you know? I heard last time that the people from the 8 Peaks eat meat according to their strength. Even if you acknowledge them as your master, don't think that you'll be treated fairly. Hearing this, the people who were discussing fell silent. If it was before they were brought here, would they ever have to worry about food? Would they have to risk their lives to hunt beasts in the fearsome beast forest for a meal like now? With their strength, if they were in the outside world, they would be respected and looked up to wherever they went. However, today was different from the past. Everything was different now. On the other side, Fengjiu followed the 2 devil cultivators towards the beast forest. He flew on his sword and followed behind them at a leisurely pace. Looking at the 2 people in front of her, she asked, "Didn't the people from the 8 mountain peaks occupy the beast forest? How could he not want such a place?" Occupy? If they want to take it, they have to see if they have the ability to do so." A devil cultivator turned around and glanced at Fengjiu. "What kind of place do you think the vicious beast forest is?" "In here, the vicious beast forest is also known as the land of death. However, not many people can enter it. Even if some people can enter it, no one is lucky enough to come out alive." Fengjiu smiled. "Oh, since that's the case, you still dare to bring me to that place?" The vicious beast forest is isolated by a formation and boundary set up by the 4 great immortal emperors. Ordinary people can't enter it. Even if they do, they'll get lost in there and won't be able to come out. However, coincidentally, we know of a place that can lead to that place. Perhaps they felt that this young man would end up dead in the end. Hence, they did not hold back when they spoke. They even told Fengjiu about the secret passage that they knew. Chapter 2272. 2 days later, in the evening, we're here. This is the beast forest. The 2 devil cultivators in front stopped and turned around to look at Fengjiu. "You haven't been here before, have you?" "No, this is my first time here." Fengjiu said truthfully. While looking in front, he asked, "There are barriers and arrays here. How do we get in?" "This way." The 2 cultivators led the way. After taking a detour, they came to a corner and lifted the surrounding weeds. One of them went in first. The other person said to Fengjiu, "You go down first." Seeing the 2 of them sandwiching her in the middle, she knew that they were just preventing her from running away. Thus, she followed the person in front and went in. When she stepped in, she felt that there were steps under her feet. However, it was pitch black inside, and she could not see any light. She could only walk down step by step. This is an underground tunnel? It shouldn't be you who dug it, right? This kind of place should be a tunnel dug by an earth attribute cultivator using his own attribute. These 2 devil cultivators were not of the earth attribute. She guessed that it was not them who dug the tunnel. She just did not expect that the cultivator who dug the tunnel would think of this. The road above was covered with barriers and arrays. If he could not pass through, he would think of a way from underground. Unfortunately, this method could only be used here. If he wanted to break through the array and barrier of this place, he could not rely on digging a tunnel. This was because the outside of this floating place was surrounded by a powerful barrier. Moreover, It was a barrier set up by the 5 great immortal emperors. Even if he dug underground, he would not be able to break through this barrier. After walking in the darkness for a long time, she gradually saw a faint light in front of her. She quickened her pace and followed the devil cultivator in front of her out of the tunnel. However, the forest was terrifyingly quiet. Faintly, she could only hear 1 or 2 ferocious beast roars in the forest, but she could not tell the direction. What level are the ferocious beasts in here? Why haven't I seen a single vicious beast? Fengjiu asked as he looked at the 2 devil cultivator. There are all kinds of fierce beasts here. As far as I know, there are even ancient fierce beasts here. However, it's best if we don't encounter those ancient fierce beasts. Otherwise, no one will be able to survive. A devil cultivator said as he took out something from his spatial ring to lure his prey. Fengjiu saw that they were busy there, and they were using the method of trapping instead of killing. Thus, she glanced at the 2 of them and said, "Why go through so much trouble? Since you want to lure that ferocious beast over, can't you just roar twice?" The moment her voice fell, she raised her profound energy aura and suddenly opened her mouth to shout. "Ah!" The loud voice suddenly rang out, giving the 2 devil cultivators a fright. Their faces turned ashen as they stared at Fengjiu with gloomy faces. "What are you doing? Didn't he know that this would attract a lot of ferocious beasts? Are you trying to get us killed?" Fengjiu shrugged her shoulders innocently and said, "Of course not. I only wanted to lure some ferocious beasts over. Wouldn't it be more convenient for us to kill them this way?" Just as she said that, she suddenly felt that the aura in the air seemed to have changed. Moreover, the ground also started to tremble slightly, as if a large number of ferocious beasts were rushing over here. Chapter 2273. Fengjiu's eyes also moved slightly as he paid attention to the movements around him. Suddenly, he felt a fierce aura pouncing towards him. Fengjiu quickly turned around, and at the same time, he leaped into the air with the tip of his foot, jumping onto a tree at the side. Roar! The ferocious beast's roar was accompanied by a powerful pressure. The bloodthirsty aura and ferocious aura caused the air to slightly change. From the tree, she could only see that the beast that pounced out was a golden-tattooed leopard. Its entire body was filled with a bloodthirsty and ferocious aura. Furthermore, it was a ferocious beast that had already reached the peak of the 9th rank. The golden-tattooed leopard pounced towards one of the devil cultivators at an extremely fast speed. It let out a low roar and slightly opened its mouth to reveal its sharp teeth. All of them were emitting a bloodthirsty and ferocious aura. The devil cultivator quickly dodged, but the golden-tattooed leopard quickly pounced again. Behind it, another group of ferocious beasts rushed over. These beasts were not as strong as the golden-tattooed leopard, but their entire bodies were filled with the smell of blood, and their ferocious aura was very obvious. The group of ferocious beasts rushed forward and quickly surrounded the 2 cultivators. They revealed their sharp claws and revealed their sharp teeth as they tore at them. The 2 devil cultivators did not expect to be surrounded by such a group of ferocious beasts not long after entering this place. They only felt the intense pain of being bitten, causing them to involuntarily raise their heads and cry out. It was also when they raised their heads that the 2 of them saw Fengjiu watching from the tree. The group of ferocious beasts below actually did not attack him, but only attacked the 2 of them. They anxiously and angrily shouted at him. "What are you still doing up there? Come down and help." Fengjiu stood on top of the tree with one hand holding a branch, watching the 2 cultivators being bitten by the ferocious beasts. She felt around in her sleeves, took out a fruit, and took a bite, saying, "It's so dangerous down there. I'd be an idiot to go down." She ate the fruit leisurely and looked at the 2 people whose clothes were torn by the ferocious beasts. Her eyes moved slightly. She has the coercion of an ancient divine beast within her body. As long as she releases a strand of that coercion, the ferocious beasts below would not dare to approach her. Otherwise, why would they only attack those 2 and not her? It was said that humans knew how to weigh the situation, but they didn't know that beasts also knew how to survive. Perhaps because of the ancient pressure emanating from Fengjiu's body, the two demonic cultivators felt the existence of the pressure, and their hearts shook. They looked at Fengjiu in disbelief and exclaimed, "You, why do you have an ancient aura? Who are you?" Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled as he chewed on his fruit. He stared deeply at the two devil cultivators below. With the strength of these two people, as long as she released her pressure, it was impossible for them not to sense it. She dared to do so because she knew that these two would not be able to return alive. "Let's talk about it when you can survive," she said from a tree as she watched the two people being knocked down. Then, the leopard opened its mouth and bit off their necks. Then it bit towards the dantian of the two demonic cultivators. Blood splashed out, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Not long after, the two demonic cultivators died. Their bodies were torn into pieces by the group of ferocious beasts and scattered on the ground. Chapter 2274. That leopard had retreated after the two demonic cultivators had died, and it let out a low growl as it stared at Fengjiu on the tree with its bloodthirsty eyes filled with fear and hesitation. Fengjiu stared at that leopard and scoffed. "What are you staring at me for? Don't tell me you want to fight with me?" She smiled playfully and looked at that leopard below. "If you don't leave, I'm going to use you as a practice partner." As though it understood her words, that leopard let out a low growl and retreated step by step. Following that, it leapt into the weeds and disappeared from Fengjiu's line of sight in a blink of an eye. She looked at that herd of ferocious beasts below and curled her lips in disdain. Not to mention that the meat of these ferocious beasts was too tough and too tough. Just based on the scene of them tearing apart those two demonic cultivators, she couldn't bear to eat this herd of ferocious beasts. Although there were ancient ferocious beasts here, but based on her current ability, if she were to meet an ancient ferocious beast, she would only be unlucky. Looks like she'd better hunt a few more ferocious beasts and roast their meat before leaving. She'd wait till her spiritual energy seal was broken before she came back to explore this beast forest. After making up her mind, she threw the core of the fruit down, and with a tap of her foot, she swept past those ferocious beasts below and headed into the depths of the forest as the night deepened. The howls of the ferocious beasts in the beast forest started to ring out. Faintly, she could even hear the howls of wolves. And in this forest, Fengjiu was roasting meat, and the rich aroma of the meat spread throughout the forest along with the night. She took out a small knife and cut off a piece of roasted meat to eat. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a bell around her waist, and the surrounding air turned cold. Seeing this, her brows moved slightly, and she swept a glance at her surroundings. She couldn't see anything in the pitch-black surroundings, but the feeling of being stared at was extremely clear. Seeing this, she ate the roasted meat in her hands in a few bites, then put the roasted pig on the rack over the fire into her space. She wiped her mouth and hands, and a voice that contained the aura of profound energy also came out. "If you continue to follow me, I will take all of you in." Her voice was clear, cold, and sharp. Her voice contained the aura of profound energy, as well as the might of an ancient divine beast. Almost at the same time her voice was heard, the bell on her waist that was ringing became silent for a moment before it started ringing again. "You don't believe me?" She curled her lips and took out the accessory on her waist. Holding the small gourd in her hand, she secretly injected her profound energy into her palm, and the small gourd instantly grew bigger in her hand. She opened the mouth of the gourd and threw the gourd in her hand above her head. The gourd emitted a ray of profound energy light, and as the light spread out, the surrounding airflow was also driven, as if it was being absorbed by the gourd. Fengjiu looked at the gourd, a dim light flashing in his eyes. It was also her first time using this. She didn't know if the effects were as good as what her sister had said. Whoosh! That gourd started to spin and sucked in the surrounding air. In an instant, she saw the surrounding leaves rustling, as if something was being sucked into the gourd. Following that, there were waves of sharp and mournful screams and cries of alarm. Those screams were sharp and eerie, bringing along a bone-chilling chill that rang out in the forest, causing her to involuntarily narrow her eyes. Chapter 2275. When she sensed that the eerie cold air around her had disappeared along with the shadows, she moved her palm and yelled, "Keep!" The gourd in midair returned to her hand. When she saw that the bell hanging on the gourd had stopped ringing, she curled her lips into a smile. It was indeed a good treasure. She shrank the gourd and hung it on her waist. Then, she sat by the fire and leaned against the tree to rest. Apart from the previous scene, the night was rather peaceful. Perhaps it was because no cultivators came here, and some of the ferocious beasts in the forest did not dare to come near Fengjiu. Therefore, she did not encounter any danger here. When the sky gradually brightened, she extinguished the fire and was about to leave when she heard the faint sounds of battle. "There's someone here?" She was slightly surprised. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and flew toward the sound. When she was about 500 meters away, she saw the scene in front of her. It was a group of 7 or 8 people. They looked like rogue cultivators. These people's strength was between the beginner and intermediate stages of the celestial sage realm. Their clothes were tattered and their bodies were covered in wounds. At this moment, they were being attacked by a group of ferocious beasts and the golden leopard that she had seen before. Logically speaking, with these people's strength, it should not be a problem for them to deal with these ferocious beasts. However, she noticed that these people's physical strength seemed to be lacking, and their attacks were not strong enough. When she looked again, these people looked like they were in their 40s or 50s. There were even 2 old men in their 60s. Although they were all men, their faces were pale, their bodies were thin, and their steps were weak. It was obvious that these people were suffering from malnutrition. How could a celestial sage realm cultivator be suffering from malnutrition? That was strange. She was slightly surprised. She did not show herself, but observed from the dark. Judging from how they worked together to deal with the ferocious beasts, they were different from the other cultivators who only cared about themselves. When she thought of this, her heart skipped a beat. She was just about to recruit them. These people came knocking on her door. These people were not devil cultivators or heretic cultivators. Although their bodies were full of murderous aura, at least they could be used by her. One of the old men was sent flying by a ferocious beast. When he saw the ferocious beast opening its mouth to reveal its sharp teeth, another man in his 40s immediately rushed forward and used his body to push the ferocious beast away. He stood in front of the old man and brandished the saber in his hand at another ferocious beast. With one stab, he took the life of the ferocious beast. Roar! At the same time, the ferocious beast let out a miserable shriek. It struggled to move forward again, but in the end, after taking 2 steps, it fell to the ground. Perhaps the smell of blood from that ferocious beast had stimulated the other ferocious beasts. The attacks from the ferocious beasts became even fiercer. Even the golden leopard roared and bit one of the cultivators. A cultivator's leg was bitten. Blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing his clothes red and dripping all over the ground. Chapter 2276. The leopard was clearly shocked and involuntarily took a few steps back. It opened its mouth and stared at Fengjiu warily. It growled as if it was asking, "Why is it you again?" Perhaps because the golden leopard suddenly retreated, the other beasts that were attacking the cultivators also retreated and looked warily at the figure standing on the tree branch. They recognized the green-robed man. They had just met him yesterday. This human had the aura of an ancient divine beast that they were afraid of. It was also because of this that they did not dare to touch him. So, why did they meet him again? Due to the sudden retreat of the ferocious beasts, the cultivators finally had a chance to catch their breath. They supported each other and retreated a few steps, vigilantly staring at the ferocious beasts in front of them while sizing up the azure-robed man who had suddenly appeared. Who was this person? Why did he suddenly appear here? And he was alone? Why would his appearance cause these ferocious beasts to fear him? A series of questions popped up in their minds. However, when they sized up the man in green, they realized that he was only a mystic. Furthermore, he was only a black tortoise god mystic. The combat strength of mystic cultivators was inferior to that of spirit cultivators. But why did this person make these bloodthirsty beasts retreat in fright without saying a word? Who are you, sir? Why did you save us? The old man among them endured the pain of his wounds and supported a cultivator whose thigh had been bitten. He looked at the young man standing on the tree branch and asked. Feng Jiu leaped lightly from the tree and landed firmly on the ground. She slowly walked forward and glanced at the heavily injured people. She said, "You guys, if I didn't do anything, you would have died without a doubt." Hearing this, the cultivators looked at each other. The old man asked, "If you have something to say, please say it. It's very simple. I'm lacking manpower. I saved you, and you have to listen to my orders in the future and treat me as your master. How about it?" Since the other party was direct, she also directly stated her purpose. Hearing this, the cultivators were slightly startled. They didn't immediately agree. Instead, they hesitated and asked, "What do you want us to do?" "Of course it's to kill." She looked at them and said, "Of course, you can also refuse. However, if you refuse, I won't save you. Do you want to live? The choice is in your hands." A few of them were silent for a moment. They glanced at each other as if they were communicating with their eyes. In the end, it was the old man who spoke. "Fine, we agree. As long as you save us, our lives are yours. In the future, we will naturally treat you as our leader and listen to your orders." "Very good." Feng Jiu's lips curled into a smile. His expression was filled with confidence as he said, "You've made the right choice. Follow me, and you'll have meat to eat." Hearing this, their expressions were complicated. No one knew what they were thinking. At this moment, Feng Jiu's gaze swept past them and landed on the golden leopard. "They're my people. Take your beasts and leave. Otherwise, I don't mind killing a few for them as food." When the golden leopard heard this, it let out a low howl. It looked deeply at Feng Jiu. In the end, it let out a low growl and quickly turned to leave. As it left, the group of beasts didn't stay and left as well. Chapter 2277. Thank you, Master, for saving our lives. They put away their shock and knelt down on one knee before Feng Jiu. Seeing this, Feng Jiu was very satisfied and said, "All right, get up. Take care of your wounds." She gestured for them to take care of their wounds first. Yes, the few of them helped each other to the side and sat down. They tore off the tattered clothes on their bodies and used them as cloth strips to bandage their wounds. Seeing this, Feng Jiu frowned. "You don't have medicine?" Hearing this, they were stunned and could not react for a moment. "What medicine?" "Medicine to stop bleeding and reduce inflammation. Medicine to treat wounds." "You don't have it?" She had a strange expression. These people were powerhouses of the celestial sage level. How could they be in such a state? Hearing this, they smiled bitterly. "Master, even if there was medicine here, it would have been used up long ago. Usually we would pick some herbs to use, but it's too dangerous here, and herbs are not easy to." Before they could finish speaking, they saw a few bottles of medicine being thrown over and landed in their arms. When they saw it, they could not help but be stunned. "Take it and use it. Clean your wounds and bandage them to prevent inflammation." As Feng Jiu spoke, he walked around the area and released his divine sense, paying attention to the surroundings to see if there were any ferocious beasts approaching because of the smell of blood. Holding the bottles of medicine, their hearts were filled with shock. This place was originally a closed-off place. There was nothing here. They lived like savages here. Things like elixirs were too precious for the people here. And their new master actually gave them a few bottles of elixirs? Did he know how precious such medicine was here? Suppressing the shock and horror in their hearts, they quickly treated their wounds, applied medicine, and bandaged them. The two with lighter injuries went to the killed vicious beasts and put away the two vicious beasts. Finally, they handed the leftover medicine to the old man, and the old man took the medicine to Fengjiu. "Master, there's still 1.5 bottles of medicine left." Fengjiu looked back and saw that there was still 1.5 bottles of medicine left. He knew that they were saving it. So he said to the old man, "Keep it." The old man stared blankly for a moment before replying, "Yes, thank you, master." If it was said that the old man had acknowledged him as his master because he hoped that he would save them, at this moment, the old man really did have some gratitude and admiration for this young man. "How did you get in? What if you didn't catch any prey? Why do all of you look like you've been hungry for a long time?" she asked in confusion. Hearing this, the few of them looked dejected and didn't say anything. In the end, the old man said, "Master, we came in through a tunnel. However, due to our lack of stamina and the strength of the ferocious beasts we encountered earlier, we were chased for a few days. It wasn't easy for us to shake them off, but we encountered that group of ferocious beasts just now. That's why, since that's the case, let's find a place to rest and roast the prey before we leave." "Yes." The few of them replied and followed Fengjiu out of this place that was filled with the smell of blood. When they reached another place, they worked together to roast the 2 ferocious beasts. However, when they were eating the meat, Fengjiu noticed that these people were obviously very hungry, but each of them only ate a small portion and stopped. Chapter 2278. Hearing this, the few of them fell silent. They looked at each other, not knowing if they should speak. Therefore, their gazes landed on the 2 old men in the middle of the group, inquiring with their eyes. Seeing this, the 2 elders were silent for a while. At this moment, one of the elders said, "Master, before we speak, may we ask a few questions?" Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. She took out a wine gourd from the space, opened the lid, and drank a mouthful of wine. Her expression was relaxed and leisurely as she said, "Ask away." The elder looked at Fengjiu and said, "I don't see much of the smell of blood on Master, nor is there any murderous aura. You're very different from the people here. May I ask, who are you? Why did you come here?" Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled softly, "So that's why." She looked at them and said with a smile, "I just came in a while ago. As you can see, I'm not a demonic cultivator, nor a heretic cultivator. I'm also not from any sect. You can consider me a rogue cultivator. When I was fighting with the demon lord's subordinate, Shueluo, he opened the door of darkness and sucked me in. That's all." She smiled and drank another mouthful of wine. Then, she looked at them and said, "Now can you speak?" These people were really cautious. Hearing this, the 2 elders looked at each other and nodded slightly, saying, "Master, actually, we came here because of our enemies. We're a reclusive family. When we were sucked in, other than ourselves, our wives and children were also here. Therefore, other than supporting ourselves here, we also have to support our wives and children and protect them." Fengjiu looked at them in surprise. "You're for a reclusive family? And your wives and children are also here?" She was slightly surprised. She did not expect this. According to what she knew, most of the people here were evil people and demonic cultivators. Children were even rarer. However, if they were really from a reclusive family, it was normal for them to have wives and children. "Yes, other than our wives and children, there are also some clansmen," the elder said. She put away the wine gourd in her hand and asked, "How many people are there in total? Have you been discovered by anyone else?" With their strength, it wouldn't be a problem for them to survive. However, if they brought their wives and children with them, then if they were discovered by other devil cultivators or cultivators with evil intentions, it would be difficult for them to survive. Including us, there's a total of 39 people. Fengjiu rubbed his chin and said, 39 people. That person has a lot of them. 2 vicious beasts won't be enough to share." After thinking for a while, she stood up and said, "Since that's the case, I'll bring you guys to hunt some more prey. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome for me to come here every few days." The few of them were slightly startled. They looked at each other and replied, "All right." After they ate some meat, their physical strength gradually recovered. As long as their physical strength recovered, their combat strength would also recover, and they would be able to fight those fierce beasts. She glanced at them and said, "Then the two of you with lighter injuries will follow me. The rest can rest here and wait for us to come back." "Master, let's go together," the old man said, worried that the three of them couldn't handle it. Chapter 2279. You can only walk out of this barrier from the inside. You can't enter from the outside. As long as you stay inside, you won't be in any danger, Fengjiu said to the few of them. After giving them some instructions, he led the two of them away. "Second uncle, who do you think he is?" Seeing them leave, a middle-aged man inside the barrier could not help but ask. "No matter who he is, since you've acknowledged him as your master, don't be disloyal." As the old man spoke, he glanced at the few of them and said, "He saved us and even gave us medicine to use. Now, he's going to hunt fearsome beasts for us. Just based on these points alone, we owe him a great debt of gratitude." "Yes, we know," the few of them replied. They knew this in their hearts, but even so, they were still curious about this mysterious new master. On the other side, the two men who followed Fengjiu into the forest looked at the figure in front of them with confusion in their eyes. Hence, one of them asked, "Master, we encountered fearsome beasts just now. Why didn't you let us hunt them?" Hearing this, Fengjiu turned around and smiled. "The meat of those fearsome beasts is too tough and not delicious. I'll bring you to hunt wild boars and the like." The two of them were slightly startled, but did not say anything else. They just quietly followed behind him. When they came to a place, Fengjiu stopped in his tracks and gestured to the two behind him. The two of them looked ahead and saw a group of level 3 fearsome beasts, black-skinned wild boars, walking in the forest ahead. The moment they saw the group of level 3 fearsome beasts, they immediately pressed the weapons at their waists and prepared to attack. Seeing their movements, Fengjiu glanced back at them and raised his eyebrows slightly, asking, "What are you doing?" The two of them were stunned. "Hunting fearsome beasts." Fengjiu smiled. "Why do we need to attack? Just watch me." The two of them watched as he took out something and lit it upwind. Spirals of green smoke filled the forest. Those prey that were targeted by Fengjiu were completely unaware and continued to walk forward. Some were walking in the forest, while others were lying on the ground and sleeping. After about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the beasts that were moving suddenly fell down one by one. Their bodies were powerless as they lay on the ground. The beasts that were originally lying on the ground howled uneasily. Seeing this scene, the two men were somewhat stunned. In order to hunt wild beasts, they were covered in wounds. This time, they came out with their newly recognized master, but the beasts fell one by one without any effort. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and deal with these vicious beasts and store them in the space." Fengjiu shouted at the two of them. The two of them quickly regained their senses and replied in surprise, "Yes." Then he quickly ran forward, killed those vicious beasts, dug out their beast crystals, and put them all into the space. "Master, it's all done. These are the beast crystals we dug out from the bodies of the ferocious beasts." The two men looked at Fengjiu with excitement and admiration. At the same time, they handed over the beast crystals they dug out. At this moment, they admired and respected him from the bottom of their hearts. With this kind of ability, he was more than qualified to be their master. "These things should be enough for your people to eat for a while, right?" Fengjiu asked. The two of them nodded, their faces filled with unconcealable joy. "It's enough, it's enough." Chapter 2280. "Master, what was that thing you ordered just now? How could it even take down a third-level ferocious beast?" As the two men walked, they looked at Fengjiu and asked excitedly. Seeing the two burly men unable to hide their excitement, Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. "So, there's meat to eat if you follow me, right? In the future, you can eat big chunks of meat. Don't worry about not having meat to eat." Hearing this, the two men grinned. At this moment, the two men were so happy, so happy. This way, their clansmen wouldn't have to go hungry anymore. When they returned, if the chief and the rest knew that they had hunted so many third-level black skin boars in such a short time, they would definitely be shocked. Just as the three of them were heading back, on the other side at the boundary, a seventh-level unicorn was ramming against the boundary, attempting to pounce in and bite out the people inside. The few people inside the boundary sat close to each other, facing the outside in a defensive posture. They held weapons in their hands. In case the boundary was broken, they could immediately enter battle mode. Roar! A beast roar was heard. That seventh-level unicorn dug its hind legs into the ground and used all its strength to ram forward. When the boundary was hit, a profound energy aura rippled outwards. The few people inside the boundary couldn't help but feel their hearts in their mouths. Although their strength wasn't bad, they were all heavily injured at this moment. Moreover, their physical strength couldn't be recovered in this short period of time. If they really had to fight with this seventh-level unicorn again, they were afraid that it would really be a fierce battle. However, just as they were all on guard, they saw the seventh-level unicorn suddenly turn its head. It looked around and exhaled 2 breaths from its nose, looking somewhat uneasy. Seeing this, the few of them were slightly surprised. This seventh-level unicorn seems to be. Before they could finish, they saw 3 people walking over from not far away. They're back. The few of them exclaimed in surprise. Seeing the 3 of them return, they were just about to warn them to be careful of the 7th-level unicorn when they saw their master leap onto a tree. The 2 clansmen on his left and right surrounded the 7th-level unicorn, one in front and one behind. You guys go ahead and practice. With your strength, taking down this 7th-level unicorn shouldn't be a problem. As Fengjiu spoke, he sat leisurely on the tree and sipped his wine, glancing sideways at the Class 7 ferocious beast below. The 2 of them responded and unsheathed their weapons, instantly attacking the Type 7 unicorn. Perhaps it was because they had eaten something, their physical strength was gradually recovering. At this time, the 2 of them exerted their immortal sage combat strength. Even though they were only at the early stage of the immortal sage realm, they still managed to kill the 7th-order savage beast in less than half an hour. Bang! Roar! With a loud thud, the Type 7 unicorn beast slammed into the ground, and a powerful sword chi slashed down, decapitating the Type 7 unicorn beast. Seeing this, Feng, he was quite satisfied. With a wave of her hand, she removed the protective shield and asked, "Have you all rested well?" "Master," the few of them supported each other as they walked out and bowed to Fengjiu. "We can leave at any time." After resting for a while and eating vicious beast meat, the spirit energy in his body had been replenished. His physical strength had gradually recovered, so it wasn't a problem for him to leave. Chapter 2281. Let's go. Once we're back, you should recuperate from your injuries. She leapt down from a tree and said, "Lead the way." "Yes, master, this way," one of them said as he led the way. The other returned to their group, unable to hide the excitement on his face. Seeing this, the 2 elders lowered their voices and asked, "You've returned so quickly. Did you manage to hunt anything?" They had only left for a short period of time, yet they had returned so quickly. Did they manage to hunt anything? Clan leader, 3rd elder, we did. Master brought us to hunt a 3rd-level black-skin boar. He said that the meat of a 3rd-level black-skin boar is more tender. The man grinned and looked at the figure walking leisurely in front of him. He said to them, "You don't know, but Master is really powerful. He didn't even have to lift a finger, and he helped us hunt down 19 black-skin boars." Hearing this, the few of them were slightly surprised, but also curious. What happened? Tell us in detail. It's like this. The man explained the whole story to them in detail. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. In the future, we won't have to worry about our people running out of food. Master's medicine is too powerful. We don't even have to lift a finger. However, hearing this, some people were delighted while others frowned. When the 2 old men and the 2 middle-aged men heard this, they thought even more. Now that they were using medicine to hunt ferocious beasts, what if they ran out of medicine? Although their powers were at the immortal sage level, there were still some ferocious beasts in the beast forest that they could not handle. If they used medicine, it would not be a long-term solution. Fengjiu did not know that the people behind her were worried about this matter. She followed them out of the beast forest and saw that they were also using the secret underground passage. It was just that it was different from the one she had used to enter the forest. After leaving the beast forest, she followed them on their flying swords. Along the way, they stopped to rest. After about 3 days, they finally arrived at their hiding place. "Master, it's here," the elder said as he pointed to a place in front of them. Fengjiu looked in front and raised her eyebrows. "There's not even a single person here, much less a place to hide. Are you sure that your people are all here?" "Master, this is indeed a good place. However, our hiding place is not above, but in an underground cave." The old man stroked his beard and smiled. He said to Fengjiu, "There is a formation here. Master, please follow us." As he spoke, he led the way. After Fengjiu followed them into the array, he could clearly feel 2 divine senses probing him. He heard the old man in front of him say something, and the 2 divine senses retracted. At the same time, their auras were revealed. "Patriarch, you're finally back." Excited voices mixed with joy rang out. 2 figures quickly ran out. Fengjiu looked and was surprised. It turned out to be a wall made of sand. Behind the wall was a tunnel that led underground. Was there someone with the earth attribute among them? So he didn't live on the surface, but in an underground cave? Her eyes flickered slightly as she found it very interesting. Since he could think of living in an underground cave, it was no wonder that he could survive here with his wife and children. Chapter 2282. Don't be presumptuous, the old man reprimanded. When the 2 saw this, they couldn't help but lower their heads. The old man turned to Fengjiu and said, "Master, please don't be offended. They don't know yet." Fengjiu responded. She couldn't help but feel amused when she saw the 2 men raise their heads in disbelief and look at her in shock because of the old man's call of master. "How are the people in the clan during our absence?" The old man asked the 2 of them. One of the men quickly said, "Patriarch, nothing happened during this period. A group of devil cultivators passed by here 2 days ago, but they didn't find us. However, a few of the children in the cave are sick. It's been 2 or 3 days, and they don't seem to be getting better. Moreover, their condition is getting worse. We can't do anything about it. It's good that you're back. Quickly take a look at the children." Hearing this, their faces all changed, and worry emerged on their faces. "Master, please come in." The old man suppressed his worry and gestured to Fengjiu to enter. Fengjiu nodded and followed them into the underground cave. When they entered, they saw how big the cave was. The caves were connected like a maze. After walking for a distance, they could faintly hear the sound of crying. Little six, wake up, little six." Hearing the sound of crying, they quickened their pace. Not long after, they finally came to a wider cave. The patriarch and the others quickly walked forward while Fengjiu glanced around. This cave was some distance from the surface. Even experts at the peak of the sage immortal realm or immortal venerable realm wouldn't be able to detect the movements and aura underground. It was a good place for them to hide in. However, it was underground after all. The air was humid, and it wasn't good for them to live in it for a long time. They turned around and looked forward. Other than some men and women in their 20s and 30s, there were 7 or 8 children. The oldest looked to be about 15 or 16 years old, and the youngest was about 6 or 7 years old. Most of the children were pale and breathless. There was also a 13 or 14-year-old boy lying on the stone bed. He was on the verge of death. Little Six, I'm afraid little Six won't be able to hold on for much longer. The old patriarch looked at the dying young man on the stone bed. His eyes reddened, and he choked with sobs. Hearing this, the children and youths all began to cry. The adults also shed tears, their faces filled with sorrow. Seeing that they had all ignored her, Fengjiu cleared his throat and said calmly, "I know medicine. Why don't I take a look at him?" As soon as she said this, the crying suddenly stopped, and everyone turned to look at her. "Who is this green-robed man? Where did he come in? Why is he here?" Hearing their discussion and seeing their wary gazes, Feng Jiu couldn't help but smile and look at the old patriarch. The old clan leader regained his senses and hurriedly said to everyone, "His name is Feng Jiu. He saved us in the beast forest, so we have already recognized him as our master. From now on, he will be the master of our ancient clan." Hearing this, everyone was stunned and didn't regain their senses for a long time. Obviously, they found it hard to believe that a new master had suddenly appeared. "Master, you really know medicine?" The old clan leader asked with a trembling voice. "Yes," Feng Jiu replied. Chapter 2283. Seeing this, Feng Jiu waved her hand and said, "Get up. You're already so old. There's no need to kneel to me so easily." She slowly walked forward and sat beside the bed. She reached out to feel the pulse of a youth on the bed and checked his body. After a while, she said, "This is an illness caused by the dense yin qi in the cave for a long time. In addition, it's caused by malnutrition. As long as he walks outside more often and basks in the sun to replenish his nutrients, he'll be fine." As she spoke, she took out a nutrient solution from her space and said to the woman beside her, "Come and feed this to him." The woman couldn't help but look at the tribe leader. Should she take it? "Take it. Do as master says." The old tribe leader said, and gestured for her to take it. "I'll help little six," the middle-aged man said, and went forward to help the youth on the bed so that the woman could feed him the nutrient solution. Feng Jiu looked at the other youths and children and said, "These children's bodies aren't very good. It's all because of the cold qi in their bodies." As she spoke, she took out a bag of spirit rice from her space and handed it to another woman. "Boil this spirit rice into porridge. Call me when it's done. I'll add something to dispel the cold." Okay. The woman was pleasantly surprised. They hadn't eaten anything like spirit rice since they came in. "Isn't there roasted meat? Take some for them to fill their stomachs first." Feng Jiu looked at the men and sighed in her heart. With such strength and cultivation, it was really strange that they could mix in like this. Come over here. This time, the prey we hunted were all hunted by Master. It's enough for us to eat for a long time." As the men spoke, they took out roasted meat from their space rings and cut it into pieces and handed it to their clansmen. They hadn't smelled the aroma of meat for a long time. Seeing the huge, vicious beast roast meat in front of them, the children and youths couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Their eyes lit up, while the adults revealed joyful smiles. This vicious beast meat has a strong spiritual energy. The child's body is weak now, so it's not suitable for him to eat too much. Feng Jiu looked at them as she spoke. When she saw the children and youths looking at her eagerly, she said, "Everyone, just eat a small piece first. After you eat the porridge, you can eat the roast meat." "All right." Hearing this, everyone responded happily. The cave was filled with the aroma of meat, and everyone had a satisfied smile on their faces. Seeing them so easily satisfied, Feng Jiu had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It was precisely because they were trapped here that these things that were common and ordinary to the people outside were precious to them. For some people, happiness was a full meal, a bowl of spirit porridge, or a piece of roasted meat. The two women who went to cook the congee earlier walked over to Feng Jiu and said, "Master, the congee is almost done." Hearing this, Feng Jiu followed them to another cave. She saw that there was a big pot there, and the spirit rice inside was already boiling. A thick porridge aroma wafted out. Seeing this, she added some medicinal herbs to expel cold and replenish qi, and added salt. Finally, she said to them, "Scoop some for everyone." "Okay." The two women smiled and began to get busy. Chapter 2284. Can I have another bowl? The child was only 7 or 8 years old, but due to long-term malnutrition, he was much younger than his peers. His pale face was thin and green, with a trace of timidity, but his eyes could not hide his desire. When Fengjiu heard this, her heart could not help but ache. She looked at the child and smiled gently. Of course. As soon as she finished speaking, a huge smile appeared on the child's palm-sized face. He immediately ran towards the woman. "Aunt, Master said that I can have another bowl." Looking at this scene, the eyes of the Gu family's lords could not help but redden. They were originally a large, hidden family clan, but they never thought that they would one day end up like this. They were trapped here and could only live like savages. They could not eat 3 meals and were as skinny as a match. How could they not feel upset when they saw the few remaining juniors in the clan like this? After everyone had eaten their fill, the old patriarch called a total of 39 people together. Even the young man who had been on the verge of death was helped up. However, after drinking a bottle of nutrient solution, his breathing had recovered a lot, and his spirit was much better. We almost could not return from this trip. It was Master who saved us, so we made an oath that the Gu family will serve him as our master. As the old clan leader spoke, he looked at the remaining people. Everyone knew that it was this young man who had saved the clan leader and the rest. He had even hunted for them, given them spirit rice, and healed their children's bodies. When they heard the clan leader's words, they did not hesitate and immediately knelt respectfully. "We greet Master." Everyone's voices rang out in unison. The voices of men and women were mixed with the voices of children. Although it was a little comical, everyone's expression was respectful and serious. Fengjiu looked at everyone and said, "Rise." "Thank you, Master." They replied and stood up. "Follow me, and I will not treat you unfairly. I only have one request for you, and that is to be loyal." Her voice faintly rang out, and her voice clearly entered everyone's ears. "We swear loyalty to Master. We will never betray him." As the old clan leader spoke, the others all said in unison, "We swear loyalty to Master. We will never betray him." "Very good." She nodded, glanced at them, and said, "After entering this place, you can no longer increase your strength and cultivation. The strength of these children and youths is very weak. Although you can't cultivate to increase your strength, you can't fall behind in martial arts. From today onwards, you have to strengthen your martial arts training. This way, the toughness of your bodies will greatly increase. Also, during this period of time, you all stay here and recuperate. I have to go out and find some cultivators." As she said this, she flipped her hand and handed them some bottles of medicine. "These are some commonly used medicines. You should keep them just in case. I don't think they'll be back anytime soon." Hearing Fengjiu's words and looking at the medicine he handed over, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. For a moment, they didn't know whether to take it or not. It would be best if the old patriarch stood up and spoke. Chapter 2285. "That's right, Master. If we don't go out, we won't get hurt. You should keep them for yourself," another old man said. Fengjiu smiled and placed the medicine in the patriarch's hands. "I have plenty of these things. Since I told you to keep them, just keep them. Remember, don't go out to hunt during this period of time. Recuperate and wait for me to come back." Seeing this, the clan leader kept the medicine and nodded after a long time. "Okay, we'll listen to Master. Master must be careful when you're outside." As he spoke, the clan leader still felt that it was inappropriate and said, "Master, how about this? Let Gu Xiang accompany you. This way, if anything happens, he can take care of you." Hearing this, a man at the side stepped forward and said, "Master, the clan leader is right. Let me go out with you. We can take care of each other." Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a while and said, "All right, then let him accompany me." She agreed with a smile. Because she wasn't in a hurry to leave, Fengjiu stayed here for the time being, and she only left with Gu Xiang after around 2 days. On the way, the two of them walked side by side. Gu Xiang looked at his master, who was walking leisurely, and could not help but ask, "Master, where are we going?" "Just walking around." As Fengjiu spoke, she threw out the rainbow glass feather from her waist and jumped onto it. She said to Gu Xiang, "Follow me." With that, she flew forward. Seeing this, Gu Xiang followed closely behind. Looking at the seven-colored glazed feather that his master was sitting on, he was slightly surprised. He had heard of this seven-colored glazed feather before, but wasn't this in the lower continent? How could it be in his master's hands? He was puzzled. The longer he followed his master, the more he felt that he was mysterious and unpredictable. The two of them flew in midair. Especially since Fengjiu was sitting on a rainbow glass feather, the rainbow light was very dazzling. It could be said that the people below could see her in midair from afar. Two demon cultivators had their eyes on the rainbow glass feather that Fengjiu was sitting on. Hence, the two of them jumped onto a lush tree, and one of them took out a bow, an arrow, and aimed at Fengjiu. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sharp sound of an arrow piercing through the air was heard. It shot towards Fengjiu with a xiao sound. Gu Xiang, who was following behind, saw this and immediately shouted, "Master, be careful." He wanted to go forward, but he heard his master's clear voice. "Don't come over." Fengjiu, who was sitting on a rainbow glass feather, and who was originally sitting on a rainbow glass feather, at the same time, she said to Gu Xiang, "Go down." "Yes." Gu Xiang came to his senses and immediately descended from the sky on his sword. He flew into the forest to find out who had attacked them in the forest. After Fengjiu avoided the arrow in midair, it made a turn and shot back towards Fengjiu. Seeing this scene, Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly and the corners of her lips curled up. It's actually a magic weapon. She supported herself on the rainbow glass feather with one hand and jumped up. Standing on the rainbow glass feather, she faced the arrow head-on. Seeing that the arrow was about to hit her, she raised both hands and a dark energy aura surged between her hands. Just as the arrow was about to pierce between her eyebrows, she exerted force with both hands and caught the arrow, preventing it from going any further. Chapter 2286. She immediately flipped her hand and removed the spiritual energy on the arrow. Only then did she look down. She saw that the demonic cultivator below saw that she had caught the arrow, so he pulled his bowstring and shot out a second and third arrow. The two arrows pierced through the air. Fengjiu flew down and jumped down from the rainbow glass feather to the ground. The two arrows also shot towards the ground. She led the two arrows to chase after them. When she arrived in front of a large tree, she passed by it. One of the arrows shot into the tree with a whoosh, while the other one was caught by her in a flash from behind to remove the spiritual aura on the arrow blade. She kept the three arrow blades in her hand one by one. Seeing that Gu Xiang had already started fighting with the demonic cultivator, she went forward. The two devil cultivators were both at the immortal sage realm. Gu Xiang was not a match for them at all. When she saw this, her profound energy aura surged. Her movement technique was as quick as a ghost as she quietly rushed forward. A cold light flashed past, and an arrow flew out from her hand. With a swoosh, it shot into the dantian of one of the devil cultivators with a speed that was too fast to be heard. And the demonic cultivator groaned, and his eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at her. He staggered backward and finally fell to the ground. His body twitched for a moment before he died. Seeing that the demonic cultivator had died, the other person was shocked. He looked at Fengjiu in horror, then quickly retreated. With a flip, he prepared to escape into the forest. Seeing that the demonic cultivator had fled, Gu Xiang was about to give chase with her sword when she heard Fengjiu's voice. No need to chase. He looked back and saw that his master had opened her hand. Two arrows were spinning in her hand, carrying a powerful, profound energy aura. With a whoosh, they chased after the demonic cultivator. In the blink of an eye, he saw the two sharp arrows pierce through the devil cultivator's body. From afar, he could only see fresh blood splattering out. The devil cultivator fell to the ground. Motionless, seeing this scene, he couldn't help but open his mouth and look at Fengjiu in disbelief. Moss Master, wasn't he just a black martial god? How could he be so powerful? Although his opponent was a devil cultivator, he was still a celestial sage stage devil cultivator. Why couldn't he dodge those 2 arrows? What are you waiting for? Fengjiu looked at him and said, "Go and collect everything that can be used on them." "Oh, okay, I'll go right away." Gu Xiang only felt that his head was in a mess. Clan leader had asked him to follow along and protect Master, but looking at Master's strength, he didn't need his protection at all. He took the items from the 2 devil cultivators and handed them to Fengjiu. He grinned and said, "Master, these 2 devil cultivators each have a space ring and 2 Chinquin pouches. Other than some magic tools, there's nothing else inside. However, this bow and arrow are very good. It's also an extraordinary treasure." Fengjiu glanced at it and took the bow and arrow. He reached out and wiped off the demonic aura on it, then handed it to him and said, "Keep everything. Wear this bow and arrow with you." Gu Xiang was slightly startled as he watched the demonic aura on the bow and arrow being wiped off just like that. He couldn't help but glance at Fengjiu. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Chapter 2287. However, when he saw his master wiping it with his hand, as if it was effortless, he couldn't help but be startled. Exactly how powerful was his master? The reason why he was able to have his current strength and cultivation was not only because he was heavily groomed by the clan back then and used a lot of medicinal pills, but he also cultivated for several decades. However, the age of their master's bone was not much older than the younger generation in their clan. Yet, at such a young age, he had such a terrifying cultivation. What are you thinking about? Let's go. Fengjiu glanced at Gu Xiang, who was deep in thought. She tapped her toes and jumped onto the rainbow glazed feather again. Let's go. As long as we wander around, there will naturally be prey that will come to us. Hearing this, Gu Xiang's mouth twitched. At this moment, he finally understood why his master didn't use the inconspicuous flying sword, but used the dazzling rainbow glazed feather as a flying device. It turned out that he wanted to lure enemies to him. Of course, if anyone here was greedy, they would definitely come to snatch the rainbow glazed feather when they saw it. Weren't those 2 demon cultivators the best examples? In the end, not only did they fail to snatch the treasure, they even lost their lives. Just like that, the 2 of them flew along the way. On the way, Fengjiu said to Gu Xiang, "Just follow us in the dark. Conceal your aura, and don't let anyone discover your existence. Make good use of the bow in your hand." Hearing this, Gu Xiang was slightly startled. Then he replied, "All right. If Master has any orders, just call me, and I will show myself." With that, he concealed his aura and changed from being in the open to being in the dark. Fengjiu probed for a while and nodded to herself. He was indeed worthy of being a member of a reclusive family. Not everyone could hide their aura. Even if she didn't check carefully, she probably wouldn't have been able to sense his existence. It seemed that she had picked up a treasure in this family. Although there were only 39 people left, they would definitely be useful in the future. Along the way, one of them was in the open while the other was in the dark. Some demon cultivators and cultivators appeared one after another, wanting to snatch her Dharma weapon. In the end, they were all killed by the 2 of them. 3 days later, when Fengjiu returned to the forest with more itinerant cultivators, she kept the rainbow glazed feather and changed to walking slowly. However, she held a jug of wine in her hand and drank as she walked. She was very satisfied. When the itinerant cultivators who were sitting scattered saw a green figure walking out of the forest with a wine jug in his hand, they couldn't help but be surprised. "It's him? That man in green? Didn't he follow the 2 demon cultivators to the beast forest? How could he still be alive?" For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on Foam 9. They saw that there was no trace of blood on his cyan robe, only a little dirty and stained with some dust. However, the young man looked exactly the same as when they had seen him 7 or 8 days ago, and they could smell the fragrance of the wine from afar. At this moment, a demon cultivator stared at the wine jug in Fengjiu's hand and stood up. He strode forward and blocked in front of her. His cold voice carried a strong, murderous aura and pressure as he asked, "Hey, kid, how did you come back alive? What about the other two?" Chapter 2288. The other two. She leaned against the tree and gently shook the wine gourd in her hand. She narrowed her eyes, and her voice carried a hint of indifference, like a cat basking in the afternoon sun. Her entire body was filled with a languid aura. She looked at the demonic cultivator, and the corners of her mouth curled into a strange smile. She said unhurriedly, "They're dead." Hearing this, the demonic cultivator's pupil shrank. "You killed them." Fengjiu drank a mouthful of wine and said, "No, they died under the claws of ferocious beasts. I saw them being torn to pieces by a group of ferocious beasts. Not even their bones were left." Hearing this, the surrounding people's breathing stagnated, and they couldn't help but look at the man in green. The two demonic cultivators were dead? Then how'd he come back alive? According to him, when the two demonic cultivators were surrounded and torn to pieces by a group of ferocious beasts, he was not far away. Thinking of this, the crowd's expressions were different. Pairs of probing eyes fell on the man in green. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He inexplicably took a step back. He originally wanted to stir up trouble and deal with this young man, but now he couldn't help but hesitate. He stared at the young man for a long time. He saw that the young man's expression was calm and leisurely. His entire body was filled with a languid aura. He was neither shocked nor afraid, as if he didn't care about the demonic cultivator at all. Seeing this, the demonic cultivator quietly retreated, not daring to attack him. Fengjiu leaned against the tree and stood. Her half-narrowed eyes silently swept across the crowd, taking in their expressions. Her gaze fell on the cultivator she had taken a liking to a few days ago. A cultivator at the celestial sage level, with a murderous aura and a sturdy waist and a strong back. Such a person should be recruited by her. However, she still lacked an opportunity to subdue him. Rather than recruiting them one by one, it would be better to let them find her themselves. With a thought, she sat down cross-legged under the tree and took out a roasted meat leg from her space to eat. Accompanied by wine, she was very satisfied. When the surrounding cultivators smelled the fragrance of the roasted meat, they couldn't help but turn to look at the man in green. When they saw this scene, the corners of their mouths couldn't help but twitch. Was this man doing this on purpose? These people hadn't smelled the aroma of meat for several months, but he had wine and meat and was sitting there eating casually. They couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They tried their best to restrain themselves from looking at him, but the rich aroma of meat permeated the air, causing them to involuntarily take a deep breath. However, the more they smelled the aroma of meat, the more their stomachs, which were originally not that hungry, grumbled uncontrollably. Listening to the rumbling of the stomachs around them, although everyone's faces were tense, there were still many people who looked a little embarrassed. In any case, they were once among the top figures. But now, just a roasted meat leg was enough to make them lose face. In front of so many people, they couldn't swallow their pride and snatch the food. Therefore, the faces of those devil cultivators and heretic cultivators turned gloomy. Pairs of eyes stared directly at Fengjiu, who had a satisfied expression on his face. They all thought at the same time, find a chance to kill this brat. They believed that there must be more food in his space. Chapter 2289. These people didn't want to be bound, so they didn't join the 8 factions. Since that was the case, they probably wouldn't have much of a reaction to her words. She also didn't have much expectations for this. She only said it to let them know that she had such plans. In the future, when she could call upon hundreds of people, these people would naturally remember what she said today. Hearing this, everyone's gazes slightly changed, but they didn't say anything. Some glanced at Fengjiu before lowering their eyes to clean their weapons. Some glanced at Fengjiu with unclear expressions. Some directly stood up and left. Of course, There are also people with expressions of ridicule and ridicule. Could it be that you're thinking that if any of us are willing to join your group, you'll share your roasted meat and wine with us? Hearing this, Fengjiu curled her lips and smiled. People have to rely on themselves. How can relying on others last long? Even if you join my group, if you want my things, you'll have to see if you have the qualifications. She paused, took a sip of wine, and lazily said, I'm only inviting you, and I didn't say that I'm going to use wine and meat to invite you. With your strength and cultivation, I wouldn't dare to ask you to join my team just for this mouthful of wine and meat. Everyone's expressions slightly changed. After glancing at Fengjiu, they looked away and didn't say anything else. Fengjiu sat there leisurely eating meat and drinking wine. After a long time, he stood up and stretched before walking into the forest ahead. There were many vagrant cultivators gathered here because there was a water source. Not far ahead, there was a small stream flowing down from the mountains. The water here was sweet and cold. The water here was one of the most important resources for the cultivators to survive. When a few devil cultivators saw the azure-robed man walk towards the water source, they couldn't help but have ideas. Two of the devil cultivators glanced at each other and also stood up to follow him. Seeing this, another 2 to 3 evil cultivators also stood up and followed behind. Although the others who saw this were also tempted, seeing that there were already 5 people staring at the young man, they didn't follow. In the forest filled with trees and weeds, the distance of about 500 meters had already blocked their line of sight. They couldn't see the figure of the man in green, nor could they see the figures of the people following behind him. However, everyone here released their divine senses at the same time. However, when they released their divine senses in that direction, they were suddenly reflected back by a relatively powerful divine sense. At that moment, everyone was shocked. They withdrew their divine senses and pondered in their hearts. Whose divine sense was that? Does it belong to that heretic? And it was that demonic cultivators. Among those 5 people, there was actually someone who was hiding such a powerful divine sense. The celestial sage expert who caught Fengjiu's attention was wiping his weapon. He slightly paused and raised his head to look at a certain place in the forest, as if he had noticed something. In front, Fengjiu, who was originally walking towards the stream, walked deeper into the forest when he sensed that the people behind him were following, widening the distance between them. When the people behind saw the figure in front of them walking faster and faster, they couldn't help but snort coldly and quicken their pace to follow. Chapter 2290. Gu Xiang, who was not far behind them, looked at the celestial sage expert who was wiping his weapon. He had also noticed that person's movements just now. According to his master, he had taken a fancy to this person and wanted to recruit him. He had taken a look just now, and this person's vigilance was indeed very strong. Judging from his aura, his combat strength should also be very strong. However, he had been following behind his master all this time. Even now, he still did not know how his master planned to recruit members. At this moment, the air current in front of him caused him to hold his breath. He quietly approached and hid in a large tree. At the same time, he took out the bow and arrow on his back. In front, Fengjiu looked at the 5 cultivators who had surrounded her and smiled. She looked at them and asked, "Are you guys working together?" Seeing that the young man in front of them was not afraid and even had a smile on his face, they frowned. "That's right. After we kill you, we'll split the items equally." Although they said that, it was hard to say whether they would split the items equally in the end. "It's fine. You guys can come at me together. I also want to move my muscles." As Fengjiu spoke, he raised his hand and made a gesture. It was a gesture that indicated to Gu Xiang, who was hiding in the shadows, that he should just watch quietly and not make a move. However, those devil cultivators did not know what Fengjiu meant by that gesture. When they saw him raise his hand, a sword aura instantly shot out towards Fengjiu in front of them. Seeing that the devil cultivator had made a move, the others did not show any signs of weakness. With a turn of their swords, streams of air containing a chilling, murderous aura shot out. The cold light of their blades reflected off Fengjiu's dagger, and his figure swept out like a ghost. The green figure was instantly enveloped by a wave of mystic aura. The aura of the black tortoise god spread out, causing those devil cultivators to raise their heads and laugh maniacally. Ha 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 ha! You're actually just a mystic cultivator. Looks like you won't be able to escape today. Complacent and arrogant voices mixed with sinister laughter rang out. Among them, there were two celestial sage experts. At this moment, when they joined forces, their killing intent spread out. The intertwining sword aura formed a huge net that enveloped the green figure. Just when they thought that the green figure would be cut into pieces by the net of sword aura, the green figure suddenly disappeared in the next moment. It's too early to laugh now. Fengjiu's cold voice was like an emissary from hell, faintly entering their ears. When one of the devil cultivators heard those words, he felt a chilling, murderous aura abruptly from the soles of his feet. And he abruptly turned his head and widened his eyes in horror at the man in green who had appeared behind him at some point in time. He wanted to dodge, but he felt a sharp pain in his throat. Warm blood splashed out in an instant, causing his entire body to stiffen. He opened his mouth in disbelief. Unwillingness and anger surged in his heart. He used all of his cultivation base, and before he could take his last breath, he activated all of his cultivation base in an attempt to drag the young man in front of him down with him to the end of the world. In an instant, the demonic cultivator's body swelled up like a balloon filled with air, and a frighteningly powerful pressure spread out in an instant, covering Fengjiu. His eyes even popped out due to the surging airflow in his body. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.